The air above Pristina burned with the sound of helicopters. June 12, 1999. The day NATO forces rolled into Kosovo. Gunnery Sergeant Thomas O'Brien stood in the center of a refugee camp, 37 years old with a rifle in his hands and 200 Albanian civilians pressed against a chain-link fence behind him. The rotor wash from the Black Hawk above him turned the summer heat into a furnace. Sweat poured down his face, mixing with the smoke that rose from fires across the city. Below in the valley, thousands more surged toward the NATO perimeter. Men, women, children, all of them fleeing Serbian forces, all of them screaming the same word in broken English. Help! O'Brien had seen combat for 15 years. He had walked through Beirut after the barracks bombing. He had fought in the First Gulf War. He had learned to sleep through mortar attacks and wake up ready to kill. But nothing in those years had prepared him for this moment, for the look in the eyes of people who had watched their neighbors murdered, who had seen their villages burned. A hand tugged at his sleeve. He looked down and saw a girl, maybe 11 years old, black hair matted with dirt and blood, eyes that should have belonged to a child but instead held something ancient and terrified. She wore a torn dress that might have been white once. In her arms, she clutched a canvas bag. "American," she said. Her accent was thick. "Please, my family, they are dead." O'Brien knew the rules. Limited transport capacity. NATO personnel first. Essential refugees second. This girl was neither. Behind him, a Marine lieutenant was coordinating evacuations. Each helicopter meant life. Every person left behind meant possible death. The girl looked up at him with those eyes. O'Brien made a decision that would echo across 27 years. He picked her up, ignoring the shouts of protest from other refugees pressed against the fence. He carried her to the helicopter where a Navy corpsman with corporal stripes was helping people aboard. The corpsman was young, barely 30, with steady hands and a medic's assessment in his eyes. "She's not on the priority list, Gunny," the corpsman said. "She is now, Doc," O'Brien replied. The corpsman looked at the girl, looked at O'Brien, then nodded and pulled her into the helicopter. As the bird lifted off, O'Brien saw the girl's face pressed against the window. She was crying, but she was alive. The corpsman's name was James Harrison. He would remember that moment for the rest of his life. 27 years later, Thomas O'Brien stood behind the bar of a place called the Leatherneck in northeast Portland, Oregon. The smell of stale beer and gun oil mixed with morning coffee. Outside, rain hammered against the windows. Inside, 3 old men sat at a corner table playing cards and lying about the past. O'Brien was 64 now. His hair had gone from black to iron gray. His hands still knew how to work a rifle, but now they mostly poured drinks and wiped down counters. The bar had become his life after retirement, a place where men who had worn the uniform could gather and remember when their backs were straight and their hands didn't shake. The bell above the door chimed. A young woman walked in, shaking rain from her dark hair. She wore jeans and a gray sweatshirt with Portland State University printed across the chest. A backpack hung from one shoulder. She moved with a certain kind of awareness that O'Brien recognized immediately. The way she scanned the room before choosing where to sit, the way she kept her back to the wall and her eyes on the exits. "Morning, Katie," O'Brien called out. Catherine Sullivan smiled. "Morning, Gunny. Coffee? Is the Pope Catholic?" She slid onto a bar stool while O'Brien poured black coffee into a mug that said, "Earned, never given." Katie wrapped both hands around it like she was drawing warmth from more than just the heat. "How's the schoolwork?" O'Brien asked. "Psychology thesis is kicking my butt," Katie said. "Turns out writing about post-traumatic stress in veterans is harder when you've actually experienced it." O'Brien studied her face. Catherine Sullivan was 29 years old. Navy Hospital Corpsman First Class, retired after 4 tours in places where people still shot at Americans. Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, Somalia. She had saved lives in field hospitals and in the backs of Humvees racing toward the wire. She had held dying Marines and whispered lies about how they were going to make it. Now she was trying to become a therapist, trying to heal the part of herself that still woke up at 3 in the morning, convinced she could hear incoming mortars. "Your dad would be proud," O'Brien said quietly. Katie's smile turned sad. "I hope so." Her father had been Staff Sergeant Michael Sullivan, Marine Corps Infantry, killed in Fallujah in 2004 when Katie was 7 years old. O'Brien had served with him briefly during the First Gulf War. Good Marine, better man. When Katie had shown up at the Leatherneck 3 months ago, fresh out of the Navy and looking lost, O'Brien had recognized her father's eyes. He had adopted her on the spot, Not legally, but in the way that Marines adopt people they consider family. The three old men at the corner table looked up from their card game. One of them raised a hand. "Morning, Doc Katie," the man called out. Katie waved back. "Morning, Chief Harrison." James Harrison was 62 years old. In Kosovo, he had been a Navy corpsman who saved dozens of refugees over 6 brutal months. Now he owned a pharmacy on 82nd Avenue and spent his free time playing poker with other men who had learned to measure time in tours instead of years. Sitting across from him was Robert Castellano, 68, a former Marine Corps colonel who had planned operations in 4 different wars. He wore reading glasses now instead of combat goggles. His fingers were stiff with arthritis, but his mind still worked like a tactical computer. The third man was Miguel Rodriguez, 61 years old, Master Sergeant, retired. He had lost his left leg below the knee during a training accident in 2003. Now he wore a prosthetic and walked with a cane, but O'Brien had seen him move when he needed to. Fast, controlled, dangerous. These 4 men met every Tuesday morning at the Leatherneck. They played cards. They drank coffee. They told the same stories they had been telling for decades, and they pretended that the world still needed men like them. Katie sipped her coffee and pulled out a laptop. "Mind if I work here for a bit? My apartment has 0 heat, and the library doesn't open until 10. "Stay as long as you want," O'Brien said. "You're good for business. I'm the only customer here." "Like I said," she laughed. It was a good sound. O'Brien had learned that getting veterans to laugh was half the battle of bringing them back to life. Katie opened her laptop and started typing. O'Brien went back to his morning routine, inventory and cleaning, the same tasks he had performed for 15 years. Outside, Portland woke up slowly under heavy clouds. Cars splashed through puddles. People hunched against the rain. At 9:30, the bell above the door chimed again. 3 men walked in. O'Brien's combat instincts kicked in before his conscious mind registered the threat. His hand moved automatically toward the shotgun he kept under the bar. Then he stopped himself, forced his breathing to steady, told himself this was Portland, not Helmand Province. But something was wrong. The 3 men moved with purpose. The first one was tall and lean with tattoos covering both arms. Military ink, Marine Corps Eagle Globe, an anchor on his right bicep. But something about the way he carried himself felt off. His eyes swept the room in a tactical assessment, but without discipline, without training. The second man was shorter, broader, with a scar running down his left cheek. He wore a leather jacket despite the rain. His right hand stayed in his pocket. The third man was young, early 20s. His face was pale and his eyes kept darting toward the door like he wanted to run. He wore a Marine sweatshirt. His hand shook. O'Brien's threat assessment took 3 seconds. Armed, nervous, dangerous. At the corner table, Harrison looked up from his cards. His expression didn't change, but O'Brien saw his posture shift slightly. Castellano's eyes narrowed. Rodriguez's hand moved to his cane. Katie kept typing on her laptop, but O'Brien noticed her shoulders had gone tight. The tall man with the tattoos walked to the bar. Up close, O'Brien could see track marks on his arms. Scars from needles. The man's pupils were dilated despite the dim light. "We're closed," O'Brien said. His voice came out flat and hard, the voice he had used to give orders under fire. "Door was open," the man replied. He had an accent, Eastern European, Russian maybe. "Private event." "Doesn't look private." The man glanced at Katie, then at the 3 old men playing cards. His smile didn't reach his eyes. "Looks like a bunch of old-timers pretending they still matter." O'Brien felt his jaw tighten. 64 years old, but he could still put this punk through the wall, wanted to. But violence in his own bar meant police. Police meant questions. Questions meant complications. "I'm going to ask you once to leave," O'Brien said. The man with the scar stepped forward. His hand came out of his pocket. O'Brien saw the pistol. Small caliber. Probably a 9mm. The kind of gun someone carried when they wanted to look tough but didn't actually know how to shoot. "We're not leaving," Scarface said. "We're here to deliver a message." At the corner table, Rodriguez stood up. His cane scraped against the floor. The sound cut through the tension like a gunshot. "Gentlemen," Rodriguez said, his voice was calm, too calm, "I think you should reconsider." The young man in the Marine sweatshirt turned toward Rodriguez, and that's when O'Brien saw it. Hand signals. Subtle, quick. Marine Corps tactical signs. Danger, help, hostage. The kid was signaling, which meant he wasn't with these men by choice. Everything clicked into place. O'Brien caught Katie's eye. She had seen it too. Her posture had changed. No longer a graduate student hunched over a laptop. Now she sat like a coiled spring. Ready, waiting. Harrison pushed back from the card table. Castellano stayed seated, but his hand disappeared under the table. O'Brien knew what he was reaching for. The colonel had carried a .45 since the Gulf War. He still carried one now. The tall man with the tattoo smiled. Smart old men. You see how this works. What's the message? O'Brien asked. Buying time, calculating angles. This bar pays protection now. $5,000 a month. You don't pay, things get broken, starting with kneecaps. Protection from what? From us. O'Brien almost laughed. These three idiots had walked into a bar with 4 combat veterans and a Navy corpsman who had survived 4 war zones. The odds were so bad it was almost sad. Here's my counter-offer, O'Brien said. You walk out that door right now and I don't break every bone in your body. The man with the scar raised his pistol, pointed it at Katie. Or we shoot the girl and then we shoot you old fucks one at a time. That was a mistake. O'Brien had spent 50 years learning to control violence, to channel it, to use it only when necessary. But there were lines, unbreakable lines, and threatening a woman under his protection crossed every single one. He moved, 64 years old, but muscle memory never dies. O'Brien's hand shot out and grabbed the shotgun from under the bar. He brought it up in one smooth motion, decades of training compressed into 2 seconds. The barrel centered on Scarface's chest. Drop it, O'Brien said. Scarface hesitated. His pistol was still pointed at Katie, but his eyes were locked on the shotgun. At this range, 12-gauge buckshot would cut him in half. The tall man with the tattoos reached for his own weapon. And then Katie moved. She came off the bar stool like she had been launched from a catapult. 3 steps closed the distance between her and Scarface. Her left hand swept up and knocked the pistol toward the ceiling. Her right hand drove into his elbow. O'Brien heard the joint pop, dislocated. Scarface screamed and dropped the gun. Katie caught it before it hit the floor. The whole sequence took less than 3 seconds. Combat speed, the kind of movement that only came from training, in experience, in muscle memory written in blood. The tall man froze. His hand was on his weapon, but he hadn't drawn it yet. He looked at Katie, looked at O'Brien's shotgun, looked at the 3 old men who were now standing, and Castellano had his .45 pointed at the young man in the Marine sweatshirt. Don't, the young man said, his voice cracked. Please don't. He was talking to his companions, begging them not to escalate. O'Brien kept the shotgun steady. On the floor, all 3 of you, hands behind your heads. The tall man calculated. O'Brien could see it in his eyes, weighing options, measuring risks. Then he smiled. You're making a big mistake, old man. Viktor Kozlov doesn't forget. The name hit O'Brien like a punch to the gut. Viktor Kozlov. Harrison's face went pale. Castellano's jaw clenched so hard O'Brien could see the muscles jumping. Rodriguez's hand tightened on his cane. They all knew that name. Get out, O'Brien said. His voice was barely a whisper. Right now. The tall man backed toward the door. Scarface clutched his dislocated elbow and followed. They left without another word. But the young man in the Marine sweatshirt didn't move. He stood there shaking, tears running down his face. Please, he said, they have my sister. Katie lowered the pistol. What's your name, Marine? Tommy Brennan, Lance Corporal, 2nd Battalion, 5th Marines. Where did you serve? Helmand Province, 2021. Katie looked at O'Brien, then at the kid. Recognition flickered across her face. I know you, she said. You were at Camp Leatherneck. You came into the field hospital with a sucking chest wound from an IED. I treated you. Tommy's eyes widened. Doc Sullivan? Yeah, you saved my life. Doing my job, Katie said. Now tell me about your sister. Tommy collapsed into a chair. The words poured out of him like he had been holding them back for weeks. His sister Emily was 19 years old, college student. She had been walking home from class 3 days ago when a van pulled up beside her. 2 men grabbed her, threw her inside, gone. 6 hours later, Tommy received a phone call. A man with a Russian accent told him exactly what would happen to Emily unless Tommy did exactly as instructed. He would go to specific locations, deliver specific messages, do specific jobs. If he refused, Emily would disappear into a network that moved women across the country like cargo. She would be sold, used, destroyed. If he went to the police, she would die. Tommy had no choice. He did what they told him. This morning, they had sent him to the Leatherneck to deliver the protection racket message. He hadn't known it was a veterans bar. Hadn't known he would walk into a room full of men who had worn the same uniform he wore. I'm sorry, Tommy said. I'm so sorry. I didn't know what else to do. O'Brien set the shotgun down. He walked around the bar and sat across from Tommy. How long do you have? They want an answer by tonight. If the bar doesn't agree to pay, they said they'll come back with more men. Make an example. Where is your sister? I don't know. They move them around, different locations every few days. Harrison stepped forward. Tommy, I need you to think very carefully. Did they say the name Viktor Kozlov? Tommy nodded. The Russian guy on the phone said that name. Said if I caused problems, Kozlov would make sure my sister suffered before she died. Harrison and O'Brien exchanged looks. 50 years of shared history passed between them in that glance. Who is Kozlov? Katie asked. O'Brien's hands clenched into fists. Someone we hoped was dead. The rain outside had turned into a downpour. Water hammered against the windows. Inside the Leatherneck, 5 people sat in silence while the weight of the past pressed down on them. Finally, Harrison spoke. Kozlov was military, sort of. He explained, 1999. The Kosovo War, NATO intervention against Serbian forces. The Pentagon launched joint operations with allied nations. Cultural understanding, military cooperation, humanitarian relief. One of those operations brought a Russian advisor named Viktor Kozlov to observe NATO peacekeeping tactics. He was Spetsnaz, Soviet Special Forces. Officially, he was there to coordinate with Russian forces in the region. Unofficially, everyone knew he was gathering intelligence. Kozlov was 30 years old, brilliant, ruthless, and according to his file, a veteran of brutal campaigns in Chechnya and other former Soviet territories. Harrison had been assigned as his liaison. They spent 6 weeks together. Harrison taught him combat medicine protocols. Kozlov taught Harrison advanced hand-to-hand combat techniques. They developed a professional respect. Then one night, Kozlov got drunk and told Harrison about his daughter, Anya, 12 years old, the light of his life. She had been killed 2 years before in the Baselin school massacre. Terrorists had taken over a school in Russia. 334 people died, 186 of them children. Anya was one of them. Kozlov blamed everyone, the terrorists, the Russian government, the world. After Beslin, something inside him broke. The man Harrison knew disappeared. In his place was something cold and hollow. The joint operation ended. Kozlov went back to Russia. Harrison never saw him again. Until years later. Reports started coming in, Harrison said. Interpol, FBI, a Russian national running trafficking networks across Eastern Europe, using military tactics. Extremely violent, extremely effective. Harrison's voice went quiet. Kozlov had discovered that his daughter's death wasn't random terrorism. She had been targeted, killed by a trafficking network that had tried to abduct her years earlier. The terrorists at Beslin were connected to organized crime, selling children. He spent years hunting the people responsible. He infiltrated their networks, learned how they operated, and he killed them one by one. Sounds like justice, Rodriguez said. It was. At first. Harrison looked at his hands. But somewhere along the way, Kozlov became what he hunted. He didn't just kill traffickers. He became one, built his own network, used it to find the people who killed his daughter. And when he ran out of those targets, he just kept going. Why, Katie asked. Because it was all he had left. Revenge was his identity. When it was over, he couldn't stop. O'Brien stood and walked to the window. Outside, Portland looked gray and cold. We thought he was dead. 15 years ago, there were reports of a Russian national killed in a shootout with Interpol in Prague. Viktor Kozlov was listed as one of the casualties. Apparently, the reports were wrong, Castellano said. Tommy Brennan looked around the table at these old men discussing a ghost from the past. So what do I do? How do I get my sister back? Katie put a hand on his shoulder. You don't do anything. We do. We? Tommy asked. O'Brien turned from the window. Marines don't leave people behind, son. Your sister is in trouble. That makes her our responsibility. You're all retired. You're not even active duty anymore. Doesn't matter, Rodriguez said. Once a Marine, always a Marine. Harrison nodded. We need to contact someone with resources. This is bigger than 5 people in a bar. No police, Tommy said quickly. They told me if I go to the police, Emily dies. Not police, Castellano said. But I know someone, FBI, retired. She might help. Might? Katie asked. She will, Castellano said with certainty. I trained her. O'Brien made a decision, the same kind of decision he had made 27 years ago in Kosovo. The kind of decision that chose right over safe. All right, here's what we're going to do. Tommy, you're staying here. We'll hide you until we figure out the next move. Castellano, call your FBI contact. Harrison, I need you to pull any information you can find on trafficking networks operating in Portland. Rodriguez, inventory. I want to know what weapons we have access to. And me? Katie asked. O'Brien looked at her, saw her father's eyes staring back at him. You're going to do what you do best, Doc. Get ready to save lives. The rest of the morning passed in controlled chaos. Castellano made phone calls from O'Brien's office. Harrison worked as contacts in the medical community, reaching out to trauma counselors and social workers who dealt with trafficking victims. Rodriguez disappeared into the back room where O'Brien kept a gun safe that held more than just sporting rifles. Katie sat with Tommy and got him to write down everything he could remember. Names, faces, locations, the kind of van they used, the times they called, every detail mattered. O'Brien stood behind the bar and thought about Viktor Kozlov. He remembered Kosovo, remembered the chaos, remembered seeing Harrison talking to a Russian advisor during the peacekeeping operations. He hadn't paid much attention at the time, just another foreign military observer in a region full of them. But now the pieces fit together. Kozlov had been there the same time O'Brien rescued the girl, the same time thousands of refugees fled Serbian forces, the same time NATO tried to stop a genocide. And now, 27 years later, their paths were crossing again. By noon, the pieces were in place. Castellano's FBI contact was named Rachel Alvarez. She had been a field agent for 20 years before retiring to a consulting position. Castellano had trained her in tactical operations during her early career. She owed him. More importantly, she had access to resources that civilians didn't. Alvarez would arrive in Portland by evening. Harrison's medical network had identified 3 trauma centers that had treated young women matching the profile of trafficking victims in the past 6 months. All of them reported the same pattern. Women arriving with no identification, injuries consistent with restraint and abuse, terrified, unable or unwilling to talk. And all of them had been picked up from hospitals by men claiming to be family, men with Eastern European accents. Rodriguez emerged from the back room with an inventory that made Katie's eyes widen. Gunny, she said, do you have a permit for all of this? Some of it. How much? Enough. The arsenal included hunting rifles, shotguns, handguns, and what appeared to be 2 M4 carbines that looked suspiciously like military issue. Don't ask, O'Brien said. Katie didn't. At 4 in the afternoon, the door to the Leatherneck opened and a woman walked in. She was 42 years old with dark hair pulled back in a tight bun. She wore jeans and a leather jacket. Her eyes swept the room with professional assessment. Castellano, she said. The colonel stood and embraced her. Rachel, thank you for coming. You said it was urgent. Alvarez looked around the bar. Her gaze settled on Katie. Who are you? Catherine Sullivan, Navy corpsman, retired. 4 tours? Yes, ma'am. Alvarez smiled slightly. Don't ma'am me. I work for a living. She turned to O'Brien. You must be the gunny. O'Brien nodded. Colonel tells me you have a trafficking situation. That's putting it mildly. They spent the next 2 hours briefing Alvarez on everything they knew. Tommy's story, Kozlov's history, the pattern of victims, the network operating in Portland. Alvarez listened without interrupting. When they finished, she pulled out a tablet and started taking notes. Viktor Kozlov, she said. FBI has a file on him 3 inches thick. Suspected involvement in trafficking operations across 15 countries. But he's a ghost. No confirmed sightings in over a decade. If he's in Portland, this is bigger than one girl. How big? O'Brien asked. Major operation. 50 to 100 victims moving through the city at any given time. Millions in revenue. And if Kozlov is running it, extremely dangerous. Can you get resources, tactical teams? Alvarez shook her head. Not without evidence. And not fast enough. If Kozlov thinks you're a threat, he'll move the victims. Tommy's sister will disappear into a network that spans continents. We'll never find her. So what do we do? Alvarez looked at each of them in turn. 4 old men and a young woman, none of them active military, all of them looking at her with the same expression. Determination. We find Kozlov ourselves, Alvarez said. Off the books, no official channels. And when we have him, we bring in the cavalry. And if we can't find him in time, Katie asked, then we make him come to us. O'Brien understood immediately. Bait. You already made yourselves targets, Alvarez said. Kozlov sent men to shake you down. You refused. That means he's going to escalate. He'll come at you harder. More men, more violence. Let him come, Rodriguez said. That's the idea. We turn this bar into a trap. Kozlov sends his people, we capture them, and we make them tell us where Emily is. And if they don't talk? Harrison asked. Alvarez's expression didn't change. I spent 20 years learning how to make people talk. Katie stood. I'm in. You don't have to be, O'Brien said. This isn't your fight. Tommy is a Marine. I'm a corpsman. That makes it my fight. One by one, the others stood. Harrison. I'm in. Rodriguez. Semper Fi. Castellano. Let's finish what we should have finished 27 years ago. O'Brien looked at these people. His family. Not by blood, but by something deeper. By shared service and shared sacrifice. All right, he said. Then we do this the Marine Corps way. We plan, we prepare, and we execute with overwhelming force. Alvarez smiled. I like the way you think, Gunny. They spent the rest of the evening planning. Alvarez had tactical training. Katie had medical expertise. The four old men had combined experience that totaled over 100 years of military service. They turned the Leatherneck into a fortress. Security cameras went up. Exit routes were mapped. Weapons were staged at strategic points. They identified choke points and kill zones and fallback positions. By midnight, they were ready. Tommy sat in the back office, armed with a shotgun and instructions to stay down no matter what happened. Emily's life depended on capturing Kozlov's men alive. They needed information, and information required prisoners. Katie checked her medical kit for the third time. Trauma supplies, tourniquets, hemostatic agents. Everything she might need if things went wrong. O'Brien stood behind the bar and felt the weight of the Colt 45 on his hip. He had carried this same pistol in 3 wars. It felt like an old friend. It felt like an, "You okay, Gunny?" Katie asked. "I was just thinking," O'Brien said. 27 years ago, I pulled a little girl out of hell because it was the right thing to do. Never saw her again. Never knew if it mattered. It mattered. Maybe. But now here we are again. Another girl in danger. Another impossible situation. He looked at Katie. Your dad used to say that being a Marine meant standing between evil and the innocent, no matter the cost. He was right. Yeah, he was. Outside, rain continued to fall. The streets of Portland were empty. The Leatherneck sat dark except for a single light over the bar. And somewhere in the city, Viktor Kozlov was making plans of his own. The trap was set. Now they just had to wait for the wolf to walk into it. O'Brien checked his watch. 2 in the morning. If Kozlov was going to move tonight, it would be soon. Criminals liked the dead hours, the time when honest people were asleep and the only witnesses were shadows. Harrison sat at the corner table with a cup of coffee that had gone cold. Rodriguez dozed in a chair near the back door, his cane across his lap. Castellano monitored the security cameras from the office. Katie paced. Sit down, O'Brien said. You're making me nervous. Can't, too much adrenaline. Channel it. You've done this before. In combat, with a unit, with support. Katie gestured at the empty bar. This is 5 people and a prayer. 6 people, O'Brien corrected. Don't forget Tommy. Tommy is a scared kid with a shotgun. Tommy is a Marine who held his ground under fire in Helmand Province. Give him some credit. Katie sat down. How do you do it, Gunny? How do you stay calm? O'Brien thought about that. I've been scared for 50 years. Eventually you get used to it. Fear becomes background noise. You acknowledge it. Then you do the job anyway. That's not calm. That's just functional fear. Welcome to combat. They sat in silence for a while. Outside, a car drove past. Its headlights swept across the windows. Both of them tensed, but the car kept going. Tell me about Kosovo, Katie said. Why? Because I need to hear something that matters right now. O'Brien poured himself a drink. Whiskey. Neat. Kosovo was chaos, different from other deployments. We weren't there to fight a conventional enemy. We were there to stop a genocide, to protect civilians caught between Serbian forces and Albanian separatists. He sipped the whiskey. I saw a girl in a refugee camp. Just a kid, all alone. Her family had been killed in an ethnic cleansing operation, and I knew if I left her there, she would die. Maybe not that day, but soon. So I grabbed her, put her on a helicopter. Never got her name, never said goodbye. She was just another refugee among thousands. You saved her life. Maybe, or maybe I just delayed the inevitable. I'll never know. O'Brien set down the glass, but I made a choice to act instead of walking away, and that choice defined who I am. That's why you're helping Tommy. That's why we're all helping Tommy, because Marines don't walk away. Katie smiled. Semper Fi, Gunny. Semper Fi, Doc. At 3:15 in the morning, the security cameras picked up movement. 2 vans, black, no plates visible. They parked half a block away. Men got out. O'Brien counted 8, all of them armed. Here we go, Castellano said over the radio. O'Brien killed the lights. The bar went dark. Harrison moved to his position by the side door. Rodriguez stood despite his prosthetic leg, moving with surprising speed to cover the back entrance. Katie crouched behind the bar with her medical kit. The front door exploded inward. Men poured through. Flashlights stabbed into the darkness. Voices shouted in Russian and English. "Where are you, old man? Come out and maybe we don't burn this place down." O'Brien waited, counted footsteps. Timing was everything. 4 men inside, 4 more outside. The odds were bad, but Marines had fought worse odds before. He stood up from behind the bar. In his hands, the shotgun. "Right here." The flashlight swung toward him. He saw faces, young, hard, confident. "Drop the weapon," one of them said. "Come take it." They moved fast. O'Brien gave them credit for that, but fast wasn't the same as trained. They bunched up, coming around the bar. Classic mistake. O'Brien fired. The sound was deafening. Buckshot shredded the first man's vest. He went down screaming. The others scattered, looking for cover. That's when the trap closed. Harrison came through the side door. 45 in hand, 2 shots, 2 men down, clean, professional. Rodriguez appeared from the back. His cane was in his left hand. His right held a pistol. He shot the nearest man in the knee, deliberately non-lethal. They needed prisoners. The remaining men tried to run for the door, tried to escape. Alvarez was waiting. She had been outside, hidden in the shadows. Now she stepped into view with a taser. 2 men went down twitching. The last man standing threw his weapon down and raised his hands. "Please," he said, "don't shoot." O'Brien walked over to him. "Where is the girl?" "Emily Brennan. Where is she?" "I don't know." O'Brien pressed the shotgun against the man's chest. "Wrong answer." "I swear, they don't tell us where they keep the merchandise. We just deliver messages and collect money." Katie appeared beside O'Brien. "He's telling the truth. Look at him. He's low-level muscle. Probably doesn't even know who Kozlov is." O'Brien lowered the shotgun. "Then you're going to take a message back to whoever sent you." "What message?" "Tell them the old Marines at the Leatherneck aren't paying. Tell them if they want this bar, they'll have to go through us. And tell them we're coming for the girls." The man nodded frantically. O'Brien let him go. The man ran out the door and into the night. Harrison walked over. "You think that was smart, letting him go?" "Absolutely not," O'Brien said. "But now Kozlov knows we're serious. He'll escalate. And when he does, he'll make a mistake." They spent the next hour securing the prisoners and calling Alvarez's contacts. The men who had been shot would survive. The men who had been captured would talk eventually, and the message had been sent. The Leatherneck was at war. As dawn broke over Portland, Katie stood outside the bar and watched the sun rise. The rain had stopped. The city looked clean and new. O'Brien joined her. "They died heroes," she said. O'Brien didn't answer immediately. He just stood there watching the light spread across the sky. Inside the Leatherneck, 4 old men and 1 young woman had declared war on evil. They had no authority, no official sanction, no backup. But they had something more important. They had each other. And they had a code that transcended age and retirement and common sense. Semper Fidelis, always faithful, to the core, to each other, to the innocent. The fight had just begun. The Portland Police Department arrived at the Leatherneck at 6:30 in the morning. 2 patrol cars and an unmarked sedan. The detective who stepped out of the sedan was a man in his early 50s with gray at his temples and eyes that had seen too much. His name was Warren Shaw. O'Brien watched him through the window and felt his gut tighten. Something about the way Shaw moved, the way he surveyed the scene. Too careful, too calculating. Like a man who was looking for something specific instead of just investigating a crime. Alvarez met Shaw at the door. She showed him her retired FBI credentials. Explained that she had been consulting on security for the bar, that the attack had been a robbery attempt, that the suspects had fled. Shaw took notes, asked questions. His tone was professional, polite, but O'Brien caught the glances Shaw kept throwing toward the back office where Tommy was hidden. After 30 minutes, Shaw closed his notebook. "We'll file a report," he said, "but I have to be honest, folks. This looks gang-related. Russian mob has been moving into Portland lately. If they've targeted you, this won't be the last time." "What do you suggest?" Alvarez asked. Shaw shrugged. "Close up shop for a while, let things cool down, or hire private security. We can handle ourselves." Shaw looked at O'Brien, at Harrison, at Rodriguez and Castellano, 4 old men who should have been playing golf or watching grandchildren. "I'm sure you can," Shaw said, but his tone suggested otherwise. After the police left, Alvarez pulled O'Brien aside. "He's dirty," she said. "You sure? 20 years with the FBI teaches you to read people. Shaw isn't investigating. He's gathering intelligence for someone else. Kozlov? Probably, which means Kozlov has resources we didn't account for. Police protection, inside information. O'Brien felt the familiar weight of combat settling over him. The understanding that the enemy was better prepared than expected, that the mission had just gotten harder. So what do? He asked. We adapt, Alvarez said, and we move faster than they expect. By noon, they had a plan. Alvarez used her FBI contacts to pull surveillance footage from traffic cameras near the 3 trauma centers Harrison had identified. She was looking for patterns, vehicles that appeared multiple times, faces that showed up in different locations. Katie worked with Tommy, going through everything he could remember about the phone calls from Kozlov's people. Voice patterns, background noises, anything that might give them a location. Harrison reached out to his network in the medical community, pharmacists, nurses, doctors, people who saw things that official channels missed. He was looking for any mention of young women being treated for injuries consistent with trafficking. Rodriguez and Castellano went shopping, not at sporting goods stores, at places that sold things civilians weren't supposed to access: body armor, night vision, communication gear, the kind of equipment that military units used. O'Brien stayed at the Leatherneck and waited. Waiting was the hardest part. In combat, you could act, move, fight. Waiting meant thinking, and thinking meant remembering. He remembered Kosovo, the girl he had saved, her face pressed against the helicopter window. He had carried that image for 27 years, a reminder that sometimes one person could make a difference. But he also remembered the faces he hadn't saved, the refugees left behind when the transports stopped coming. Thousands of them, maybe tens of thousands. One girl saved didn't balance the scales, unless you were that one girl. At 3 in the afternoon, Harrison burst through the door of the Leatherneck. His face was flushed. His hands shook slightly. I found something, he said. They gathered around the bar. Harrison pulled out his phone and showed them a message from a nurse at Emmanuel Hospital. 3 days ago, a young woman had been brought in, early 20s, Asian, multiple injuries including cigarette burns and ligature marks on her wrists. She gave her name as Sarah. No last name, no identification, no insurance. A doctor treated her. A social worker tried to help her. But the woman was terrified. She wouldn't talk, wouldn't make eye contact, just sat in the hospital bed staring at the wall. 6 hours later, 2 men arrived claiming to be her brothers. They had identification. They were polite. They signed the discharge paperwork. And they took her. The nurse who sent the message said something didn't feel right. The way the woman looked at those men, the fear in her eyes, but there was nothing the hospital could do. The men had proper documentation. Did the nurse get names? Alvarez asked. Harrison nodded. Dmitry and Anton Volkov, Volkov. The name hit like a hammer. Volkov. Close enough to Kozlov that it couldn't be coincidence. Family members, Katie said. Brothers maybe, or cousins. Either way, they're connected, Alvarez said. She was already typing on her tablet. Let me run those names through the system. While Alvarez worked, O'Brien thought about the pattern. Trafficking victims brought to hospitals. Men arriving to collect them. Documentation that looked legitimate but probably wasn't. It was smart. Hospitals had to treat everyone. And if someone showed up with the right paperwork, they had to release the patient. The traffickers were using the medical system as a recovery point for damaged merchandise. The thought made O'Brien's stomach turn. Got something, Alvarez said. Dmitry Volkov, age 32, Russian national. Entered the U.S. 6 months ago on a work visa. Listed occupation is import-export specialist. Import-export, Rodriguez said. That's never suspicious. Anton Volkov, Alvarez continued. Age 28, same story. Work visa, import-export. They're listed at the same business address. A warehouse in the Pearl District. Castellano pulled up a map on his phone. The Pearl District is commercial. Lots of warehouses and industrial buildings. Easy to hide illegal operations. Do we have an exact address? O'Brien asked. Alvarez read it off. Katie typed it into her phone and pulled up satellite imagery. The warehouse was a large concrete structure near the river, surrounded by other industrial buildings. Multiple vehicle entrances, high windows, built like a fortress. That's where they're keeping the victims, Katie said. Maybe, Alvarez cautioned, or maybe it's just an office. We need confirmation before we move. How do we get confirmation? Harrison asked. Everyone looked at O'Brien. He knew what they were thinking. Someone had to get close. Someone had to see inside that warehouse. And someone had to do it without alerting Kozlov's people. I'll go, Katie said. Absolutely not, O'Brien replied immediately. I'm the youngest, the fittest, and I have medical training. If there are victims inside, they might need immediate help. It's too dangerous. Katie met his eyes. Gunny, with all due respect, everything we're doing is dangerous, but I'm a corpsman. This is what I do. O'Brien wanted to argue, wanted to order her to stand down, but he couldn't because she was right. And more importantly, she was making the same choice he had made 50 years ago, to act instead of walking away. Fine, he said, but not alone. I'm going with you. They spent the next 2 hours planning the reconnaissance. Alvarez had equipment, night vision binoculars, wireless cameras, audio recording devices, the kind of surveillance gear that FBI agents used. Katie and O'Brien would approach the warehouse after dark. They would observe, document, gather evidence. If they saw victims, they would note locations and numbers. If they saw guards, they would note weapons and patrol patterns. They would not engage. They would not rescue. Not yet. This was intelligence gathering, nothing more. Rodriguez didn't like it. You're sending 2 people into unknown territory with unknown opposition, he said. That's how people get killed. We don't have a choice, O'Brien said. We need to know what we're dealing with before we can plan a real operation. Then let me come. 3 is better than 2. Someone needs to stay here with Tommy. If Kozlov's people come back, he'll need protection. Rodriguez's jaw clenched, but he nodded, because he understood the logic even if he didn't like it. At 8 that evening, Katie and O'Brien loaded gear into O'Brien's pickup truck. Dark clothing, surveillance equipment, weapons just in case. They drove through Portland as the sun set behind the coastal mountains. Neither of them spoke much. O'Brien was thinking about Emily Brennan, a 19-year-old college student who had been walking home from class when evil reached out and grabbed her. She had done nothing wrong, committed no crime. She was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. Like thousands of other victims, Katie was thinking about the women she had seen during her deployments. Women in Iraq and Afghanistan who had been caught in the crossfire of wars they didn't start. Women who lost everything. Husbands, children, homes, futures. She had treated their wounds, but she couldn't heal their trauma. Maybe this was a chance to save someone before the trauma happened. They parked 3 blocks from the warehouse. The area was quiet. Most of the businesses had closed for the day. A few lights burned in office windows. Traffic was sparse. O'Brien and Katie moved through the shadows like ghosts. Decades of training compressed into muscle memory. They didn't talk. Didn't need to. Hand signals and eye contact communicated everything necessary. The warehouse loomed ahead. 3 stories of concrete and steel. Security lights illuminated the entrances. Cameras covered the main doors. But the back of the building was darker. They approached from the south using a row of dumpsters for cover. Katie pulled out the monocular and scanned the building. O'Brien watched their 6, making sure no one approached from behind. I see movement inside, Katie whispered. 2nd floor. 3 windows have lights on. Guards? Can't tell. Wait. She adjusted the focus. There. 4th window from the left. Someone just walked past. Male. Carrying something. Looks like a rifle. O'Brien felt his combat instincts kick into high gear. Armed guards meant something worth protecting. And in a trafficking operation, that meant victims. Can you get a camera on that window, he asked. Katie pulled a wireless camera from her pack. It was the size of a matchbox with a magnetic base and a battery that would last 48 hours. She crept forward, staying low, and attached it to a dumpster with a clear view of the 4th window. The camera linked to her phone. Now they had eyes on the building even after they left. They moved to the east side. This part of the warehouse backed up against the river. A loading dock jutted out over the water. 2 trucks were parked at the dock. Both had covered cargo beds. Could be transport vehicles, O'Brien said. Katie was already photographing the license plates. They circled the entire building over the next hour. Katie planted 3 more cameras. O'Brien took notes on everything. Guard positions, entry points, weak spots in the security. By 10 that evening, they had what they needed. They were moving back toward the truck when Katie grabbed O'Brien's arm. Wait, she whispered. A van had pulled up to the loading dock. 3 men got out. They opened the back of the van and started pulling people out. Women, young, 6 of them, all with their hands zip-tied. One of the women stumbled. A guard grabbed her and shoved her toward the dock. She fell. The guard kicked her. Not hard, just enough to make a point. O'Brien's hand moved toward his weapon. Katie stopped him. Not yet, she whispered. We can't help them if we're dead. Every instinct in O'Brien's body screamed to act, to run down there and put bullets in those men, to free those women and burn the warehouse to the ground. But Katie was right. They needed backup, a plan, resources. Going in alone would just get everyone killed. O'Brien forced himself to watch, to memorize faces, to note details that would matter later when they came back with overwhelming force. The women were led inside, the van drove away. The guards resumed their patrols. Katie and O'Brien retreated to the truck. Neither of them spoke during the drive back to the Leatherneck. The weight of what they had seen pressed down like a physical thing. 6 women, probably more inside. All of them prisoners, all of them suffering, and O'Brien had walked away. At the Leatherneck, the others were waiting. Alvarez, Harrison, Rodriguez, Castellano, Tommy. Katie showed them the footage from the cameras, the photographs, the notes. Alvarez's face was stone. This is bigger than we thought. If they're bringing in new victims, that means they're running a distribution operation. Portland is a hub. Women come here, get processed, then get shipped to other cities. How many? Harrison asked. Based on the building size and what Katie observed, I'd estimate 30 to 50 victims at any given time. The number hung in the air like smoke. 50 people, 50 lives. We need to call in federal resources, Alvarez said. FBI, Homeland Security, this is too big for us. How long will that take? Tommy asked. His voice was tight, desperate. Days, maybe a week. They'll need to verify the intelligence, get warrants, coordinate with local law enforcement. A week? Tommy stood up. His hands were shaking. Emily doesn't have a week. They said if I don't deliver their message, they'll move her. I'm out of time. O'Brien understood. In combat, timing was everything. Wait too long and the enemy adjusted. Change positions, reinforce defenses. Or in this case, move the hostages. We go tonight, O'Brien said. Everyone turned to look at him. Tonight, Alvarez said. Gunny, we don't have a tactical plan. We don't have enough people. We don't even know the interior layout of that building. We have enough, O'Brien said. 6 of us, 7 counting Tommy. Against how many guards? I counted 8 on exterior patrol. Assume another 12 inside, 20 total. 20 armed men against 7 people, 4 of whom are over 60 years old. Rodriguez laughed. It was a bitter sound. Ma'am, with all due respect, age doesn't matter when you know what you're doing. He's right, Castellano said. I've planned operations with worse odds. Harrison nodded. And we have something they don't. What's that? Alvarez asked. Motivation. Those men are getting paid. We're fighting for something that matters. Katie stepped forward. I'm in. Whatever the plan is, I'm in. Tommy raised his hand. Me too. Alvarez looked at each of them. These people who should have been safe at home, who should have been letting professionals handle this. But they weren't professionals anymore. They were something more dangerous. They were people who had nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. All right, Alvarez said. If we're doing this, we do it right. Castellano, your tactical planning. Harrison, medical prep in case things go sideways. Rodriguez, weapons and gear. Katie, your breach team with me. Gunny and Tommy, you're on overwatch and security. What's the objective? Castellano asked. Primary objective is Emily Brennan. We find her, we extract her. Secondary objective is any other victims we can safely recover. Tertiary objective is intelligence. Documents, computers. Anything that helps FBI roll up the rest of this network. And if we encounter Kozlov? O'Brien asked. Alvarez's expression went cold. We capture him if possible. If not possible, we eliminate the threat. They spent the next 4 hours planning. Castellano worked out the tactical approach. 2 teams. Alpha team would breach from the loading dock. Bravo team would enter through a side door Katie had identified. Both teams would clear rooms systematically, moving toward the 2nd floor where the lights had been on. Harrison prepared medical kits, trauma supplies for gunshot wounds, sedatives in case victims needed to be calmed, stimulants in case someone went into shock. Rodriguez laid out weapons, rifles for the breach teams, pistols for backup, body armor that was 20 years old but still functional, flashlights, radios, zip ties for restraining prisoners. Katie studied the building layout. She drew maps from memory, noted distances, calculated approach angles. O'Brien cleaned his weapons. The Colt 45, the shotgun, a rifle he had carried in 3 wars. Each weapon was an old friend, reliable, tested, proven. At 2 in the morning, they loaded into 2 vehicles. Alvarez drove the first with Katie and Tommy. O'Brien drove the second with Harrison, Rodriguez, and Castellano. The drive through Portland was surreal. Empty streets, street lights reflecting off wet pavement, the city asleep while 7 people prepared to go to war. O'Brien thought about the girl from Saigon again, wondered where she was now, if she had made a life for herself, if she ever thought about the Marine who had pulled her onto that helicopter. Probably not. People moved on. That was how survival worked. But O'Brien had never forgotten her face. They parked 4 blocks from the warehouse, close enough to move quickly, far enough to avoid detection. Everyone checked their gear one last time. Body armor, weapons, radios. Alvarez gathered them in a circle. "Listen up," she said. "This is a rescue operation. We go in fast. We get Emily and anyone else we can carry. We get out. No heroics, no unnecessary risks. If something goes wrong, we abort and fall back to Rally Point Alpha." She pointed to a spot on the map 3 blocks south. "Questions?" No one spoke. "All right then, Alpha team, you're with me. Bravo team with Castellano. Move out in 2 minutes." They synchronized watches. O'Brien felt the familiar pre-combat calm settle over him. The world narrowed to immediate threats and immediate actions. Everything else faded away. Katie caught his eye. She looked scared, but she also looked determined. "See you on the other side, Gunny," she said. "Semper Fi, Doc." Alpha team moved first. Alvarez led with Katie and Tommy behind her. They approached the loading dock from the south, using shadows and cover. O'Brien watched through night vision. He was positioned on a rooftop across the street with Harrison beside him. Their job was overwatch, to provide covering fire if things went bad. Bravo team moved next. Castellano and Rodriguez approached the side door. Despite his prosthetic leg, Rodriguez moved with surprising speed. O'Brien counted seconds. Timing was everything. Alpha team reached the loading dock. Alvarez picked the lock in under 30 seconds. The door opened silently. They disappeared inside. Bravo team reached the side door. Castellano worked the lock. It took longer. 45 seconds. A minute. O'Brien felt sweat running down his back despite the cold. The door opened. Bravo team went inside. Now O'Brien and Harrison could only wait. Watch. Listen to the radio chatter. Alpha team inside. Ground floor clear. Moving to stairs. Bravo team inside. Hallway clear. Multiple doors. Checking rooms. O'Brien scanned the exterior. No movement. The guards who had been patrolling were either inside or had moved to different positions. Alpha team, second floor. Contact, 2 guards engaging. The radio went silent. O'Brien's finger tightened on his rifle. Then, guards down, non-lethal, continuing. He exhaled. Bravo team, found something. Room 3, multiple women. They're locked in. Copy that, Bravo. We're coming to you. O'Brien watched the windows, saw flashlight beams moving inside, shadows passing behind glass. Alpha team, linking up with Bravo. We have 15 females. Repeat. 15 females. All appear to be trafficking victims. Emily? Tommy's voice on the radio, desperate. A pause. Negative. Emily Brennan not among this group. O'Brien heard Tommy's voice crack. She has to be there. She has to be. Keep looking, Alvarez said. We're not done yet. The teams moved through the second floor. Room by room. Methodical. Professional. O'Brien divided his attention between the building and the street. Still no movement outside, but that could change fast. Third floor access found. Stairwell is locked. Heavy door. Might need explosives. Negative on explosives, Alvarez said. Too much noise. Rodriguez, can you pick it? Give me 2 minutes. O'Brien waited. Each second felt like an hour. In his earpiece, he could hear breathing. Footsteps. The quiet click of Rodriguez working the lock. Got it. Doors open. Moving up. All teams be advised. Third floor is unknown territory. Expect heavier resistance. The radio crackled. Then silence. O'Brien strained to hear something. Anything. Then gunfire. Not a lot. 3 shots. 4. The sharp crack of rifles in an enclosed space. Contact! Multiple guards taking fire! O'Brien raised his rifle, but there was no target. The fight was happening inside where he couldn't help. Guard down! Another one down! They're falling back. More gunfire. Third floor secure. We have additional victims. Repeat, 6 more victims on third floor. Emily? Tommy again? Another pause. Tommy, I need you to describe your sister. 5'4", brown hair. She has a scar on her left eyebrow from when she fell off her bike as a kid. Silence stretched. Then, we got her. Tommy, we got her. She's alive. O'Brien heard Tommy sob over the radio. All teams begin exfil. We have 21 victims. Move them to the loading dock. Transportation is en route. O'Brien keyed his radio. Understood. We'll cover your exit. He watched the loading dock, saw the door open, saw people start to emerge. Women, young, terrified. Katie and Alvarez were helping them down from the dock. Then O'Brien saw headlights. 2 vehicles approaching fast. SUVs black. Incoming, he shouted into the radio. 2 vehicles from the north. The SUVs screeched to a stop. Doors opened. Men poured out, armed, moving toward the dock. O'Brien didn't hesitate. He fired. The rifle kicked against his shoulder. 1 round, 2, 3. Controlled bursts, center mass. The first man went down. The others scattered, looking for cover. Beside O'Brien, Harrison opened fire. His aim was steady despite his age, years of training overcoming the tremor in his hands. The men from the SUVs returned fire. Bullets sparked off the rooftop. O'Brien and Harrison dropped flat. Alpha team, you're under fire at the dock. Get those victims out of there. Working on it. O'Brien rose to a knee and fired again. He saw Alvarez at the dock, herding victims toward a van that had pulled up. Katie was helping an older woman who could barely walk. Rodriguez appeared at the dock door. He had a rifle. He fired at the SUVs, forcing the men to take cover. Bravo team exiting now. All victims accounted for. The van pulled away with the first group of victims. A second van pulled up. More women climbed in. Katie counted heads, making sure no one was left behind. The men from the SUVs were regrouping. O'Brien could see them coordinating, getting ready for another push. Harrison, he said, we need to slow them down. Harrison pulled something from his pack, a smoke grenade, Vietnam era but still good. He pulled the pin and threw it. The grenade landed between the SUVs and the dock. White smoke billowed out. The men from the SUVs fired blind. Bullets went wide, no discipline, no training. Last vehicle loaded, everyone's out. O'Brien watched the second van pull away. Saw Katie jump in. Saw Tommy in the passenger seat looking back at the warehouse. Exfil complete, Alvarez said. All teams to Rally Point Alpha. O'Brien and Harrison grabbed their gear and ran. Down the fire escape. Through an alley. Behind them they could hear shouting, sirens in the distance. They reached Rally Point Alpha. The two vans were there. Alvarez was doing a head count. Everyone accounted for, she said. No casualties on our side. 3 guards down inside. Non-fatal wounds. They'll live. O'Brien looked at the victims. 21 women, some of them teenagers, all of them traumatized. Some crying, some silent. And there was Emily Brennan, wrapped in a blanket, holding on to Tommy like he was the only solid thing in the universe. Katie was checking Emily for injuries, talking to her in a low, calm voice. The voice of a corpsman who had done this 1,000 times. Harrison was already on the phone with his medical contacts, arranging transportation to a hospital, making sure these women got the help they needed. Rodriguez and Castellano were loading gear back into the trucks. Alvarez walked over to O'Brien. That was the craziest thing I've ever been part of, she said. And I've been part of some crazy things. Did we get what we needed? She held up a laptop. Castellano grabbed this from an office on the 3rd floor. If we're lucky, it has the whole network on it, names, locations, financial records. And if we're not lucky, then we just started a war with Viktor Kozlov and we have no idea what's coming next. O'Brien looked at Emily. At the 21 women they had saved tonight. Worth it, he said. They split up. The vans took the victims to a secure location where FBI agents Alvarez trusted would process them. Get them medical care. Start building cases against their captors. O'Brien, Katie, Harrison, Rodriguez, and Castellano returned to the Leatherneck. The sun was rising when they walked through the door. The bar looked different somehow, like they had crossed a threshold that couldn't be uncrossed. They had committed assault, breaking and entering, probably a dozen other felonies. But they had also saved 21 lives. Katie poured coffee. No one spoke for a long time. Finally, Harrison broke the silence. So what happens now? Now, O'Brien said, we wait for Kozlov to respond, because he will respond. What we did tonight hurt him, cost him money and merchandise. Men like that don't forgive. Let him come, Rodriguez said. We'll be ready. Castellano shook his head. It won't be that simple. Kozlov is smart. He won't attack directly. He'll come at us sideways. Then we stay sharp, O'Brien said. We watch each other's backs, and we finish this. Katie raised her coffee cup. Semper Fi. The others raised theirs. Semper Fi. Outside, Portland woke to another day. People went to work. Children went to school. Life continued like nothing had changed. But for 7 people in a veterans bar, everything had changed. They had crossed the line from civilians to warriors. And there was no going back. The laptop sat on the bar like a bomb waiting to explode. Castellano had been working on it for 6 hours, his reading glasses perched on the end of his nose, his fingers moving across the keyboard with the methodical precision of a man who had spent decades analyzing enemy intelligence. O'Brien watched him work while the morning sun climbed higher over Portland. The Leatherneck was quiet except for the sound of typing and the occasional grunt of frustration from Castellano. Katie had gone home to sleep. Harrison was at his pharmacy filling prescriptions and pretending his hands weren't still shaking from the adrenaline dump. Rodriguez sat in the corner cleaning weapons with the focused intensity of a man performing a religious ritual. At 10:30, Castellano pushed back from the laptop. "You need to see this," he said. O'Brien walked over. The screen showed a spreadsheet, rows and columns of data, names, dates, locations, financial transactions. "This is the whole operation," Castellano said. "Everything. Kozlov wasn't just running Portland. He's running a network that spans 12 states. Seattle, San Francisco, Los Angeles, Phoenix, Denver, Houston, Miami, all the way to New York." O'Brien felt his stomach drop. How many victims? Based on these numbers, they're moving 200 to 300 women per month. Have been for at least 3 years. The math was simple and horrifying. 300 women per month, 12 months per year, 3 years. Over 10,000 victims. "There's more," Castellano said. He opened another file. This one showed photographs, shipping manifests, cargo containers. "They're not just trafficking people, they're smuggling weapons, military grade, M4 rifles, grenade launchers, C4 explosives. All of it coming through the Portland docks and getting distributed to criminal organizations across the country. Where's it coming from?" Castellano zoomed in on a shipping manifest. The origin port was listed as Vladivostok, Russia. "Kozlov still has connections back home," Castellano said. "He's using Russian military surplus, stealing it, buying it, however he can get it, then shipping it here disguised as industrial equipment." O'Brien thought about the implications. Weapons trafficking on top of human trafficking. This wasn't just organized crime. This was an operation with international scope and serious resources. "We need to get this to the FBI," O'Brien said. "Already sent it," Castellano replied. "Encrypted email to Alvarez. She's forwarding it up the chain." "How long until federal agents move?" "Days, maybe a week. They'll need to verify the intelligence, coordinate with multiple field offices, get warrants for a dozen different locations." Rodriguez looked up from his weapons cleaning. "And while they're doing paperwork, Kozlov is moving his operation, covering his tracks." "Probably," Castellano said. The door to the Leatherneck opened. Detective Shaw walked in. He wore the same professional expression as before. Polite, concerned, completely false. "Morning, gentlemen," Shaw said. "Just following up on yesterday's incident. Wanted to see how everyone's doing." O'Brien met his eyes. "We're fine." "Good, good." Shaw glanced around the bar. His gaze lingered on the laptop. "Any other problems? More attempts to shake you down?" "Nothing we can't handle." Shaw nodded. He pulled out a business card and set it on the bar. "Well, if anything comes up, give me a call. Day or night, we take care of our veterans in this city." He left without another word. Rodriguez waited until Shaw's car pulled away. "He's reporting back to Kozlov," Rodriguez said. "Everything we do, everything we say, Kozlov knows about it." "Let him know," O'Brien said. "We're not hiding." Castellano closed the laptop. "Gunny, we have a problem. That warehouse raid last night, we hurt Kozlov's operation. But we didn't stop it. He has other locations, other victims, and now he knows we're coming for him. So what do you suggest?" "We need to find him. Viktor Kozlov himself. Take him down and the whole network collapses." "The laptop has his location?" Castellano shook his head. "No direct address. But there are patterns. Financial transactions that all flow to a shell company registered in Washington County. That company owns property, a lot of it." "Can you narrow it down?" "Give me a few more hours." O'Brien's phone rang. The caller ID showed Alvarez. "Gunny," she said without preamble, "we have a situation. Tommy Brennan is missing." O'Brien felt ice form in his chest. "What do you mean missing?" "He left the safe house where we placed Emily. Said he was going to get food. That was 4 hours ago. He's not answering his phone." "You think Kozlov grabbed him?" "I think Tommy did something stupid. Before he left, he asked one of my agents about the warehouse. Wanted to know if we were going back, if we were going to finish the job." O'Brien understood immediately. Tommy was a Marine, young, angry. His sister had been rescued, but 21 other women had been saved, while hundreds more remained in captivity. Tommy had gone hunting. "Do you have any idea where he went?" O'Brien asked. "No, but Gunny, if he goes after Kozlov alone, he's dead. You know that." "I know. Find him before Kozlov does." O'Brien hung up. He looked at Rodriguez and Castellano. "We need Katie and Harrison, now." 30 minutes later, all 5 of them were gathered at the Leatherneck. O'Brien explained the situation. Tommy was missing, probably doing something reckless. They needed to find him before it was too late. "Where would he go?" Katie asked. "The warehouse," Harrison said. "It's the only location he knows. He'll go back there looking for information. For revenge. The warehouse will be empty. Rodriguez said. After last night's raid, Kozlov would have cleared it out, moved everything. Unless it's a trap, Castellano said quietly. Everyone turned to look at him. Think about it, Castellano continued. Kozlov knows we hit the warehouse. He knows we're looking for him. What better way to draw us out than to leave bait? Tommy, Katie said. Maybe, or maybe Kozlov is hoping we'll come back, hoping to catch us in a place he controls. O'Brien thought about it. The tactical logic was sound, but it also meant Tommy was walking into an ambush. We need to get to that warehouse, O'Brien said, even if it's a trap. Especially if it's a trap, Rodriguez added, because Tommy doesn't know it's a trap. They loaded gear into 2 vehicles. This time they brought more firepower. Rifles, shotguns, body armor. If this was going to be a fight, they would be ready. The drive to the warehouse district took 20 minutes. O'Brien kept expecting to hear sirens, to see police cars following them. But the streets were normal, just another afternoon in Portland. They parked 3 blocks away, the same position as last night. But daylight changed everything. No shadows to hide in, no darkness to cover their approach. This is a bad idea, Katie said. Probably, O'Brien agreed, but we're doing it anyway. They moved in 2 teams. O'Brien, Katie, and Harrison approached from the south. Rodriguez and Castellano circled to cover the north side. The warehouse looked abandoned. No vehicles in the lot, no guards visible. The loading dock door was closed. Too quiet. O'Brien keyed his radio. Bravo team, what do you see? Rodriguez's voice crackled back. North side clear, no movement, no heat signatures. They had brought a thermal imaging camera this time. If people were inside, the camera would pick up their body heat through the walls. Anything inside? O'Brien asked. A pause. Multiple signatures. Second floor, maybe 6 or 7 people. O'Brien felt his combat instinct screaming. 6 or 7 people in an abandoned warehouse. It was definitely a trap. We're going in, he said. Gunny, that's suicide, Katie protested. Tommy's in there. We don't leave Marines behind. Katie's jaw tightened, but she nodded. They approached the loading dock. The door was unlocked. It swung open silently. Inside, the warehouse was exactly as they had left it. Empty crates, scattered debris, bloodstains on the floor from last night's fight, but no people. O'Brien led the way to the stairs. Each step felt like walking deeper into a trap. His finger rested on the trigger of his rifle. His eyes scanned every shadow, every corner. They reached the second floor. The hallway stretched ahead, doors on both sides. The same doors they had kicked in last night. One of the doors was open. Light spilled out into the hallway. O'Brien approached slowly. Katie covered him from behind. Harrison stayed at the stairs, watching their backs. O'Brien reached the open door, looked inside, and saw Tommy Brennan. The young Marine was tied to a chair in the center of the room. Blood ran from his nose and a cut above his eye. His hands were bound behind him. His head hung forward, but he was breathing. Tommy, O'Brien said. Tommy's head lifted. His eyes were swollen but focused. Gunny, he croaked. It's a trap. I know. You shouldn't have come. Marines don't leave Marines behind. O'Brien moved into the room. Katie followed. Harrison stayed in the hallway, keeping watch. Katie checked Tommy's injuries while O'Brien cut the zip ties binding his wrists. Can you walk? O'Brien asked. I think so. Then let's move. They helped Tommy to his feet. He swayed but stayed upright. That's when the lights went out. The entire warehouse plunged into darkness. O'Brien heard doors slamming, the sound of boots on concrete, men moving into position. Contact! Harrison's voice from the hallway. Gunfire erupted. The muzzle flash lit up the darkness in strobing bursts. O'Brien pushed Tommy and Katie toward the back of the room, found cover behind a metal desk. His night vision was gone, stolen by the sudden darkness. He fired toward the doorway. Controlled bursts. 3 rounds, shift position, 3 more rounds. In his earpiece, Rodriguez's voice. Bravo team under fire, north entrance, multiple hostiles. The warehouse had become a kill box. Guards at every entrance, muzzle flashes in the darkness. The crack of rifles echoing off concrete walls. O'Brien's combat training took over. He moved without thinking, muscle memory guiding him through the chaos. He fired, moved, reloaded, fired again. Katie was beside him, her pistol barking in short controlled bursts. For a young woman who had spent her military career saving lives, she was remarkably good at taking them. Harrison appeared in the doorway. Blood ran down his arm. Hit, he said. His voice was calm, professional. Through and through, superficial. Katie pulled him into cover, started treating the wound while O'Brien provided covering fire. Tommy grabbed a rifle from a downed guard and joined the fight. Young, scared, but still a Marine. The firefight lasted 90 seconds. In combat, 90 seconds was an eternity. When the shooting stopped, O'Brien counted 3 guards down. His ears rang from the gunfire. The smell of cordite burned his throat. "Status," he said into the radio. "Bravo team secure," Rodriguez replied. "2 guards down. We're moving to your position." O'Brien checked his ammunition. Half a magazine left. Not good. The warehouse fell silent. Too silent. Then a voice echoed through the darkness, deep, accented, Russian. "Thomas O'Brien, I know you can hear me." O'Brien's blood went cold. He knew that voice. Hadn't heard it in 27 years, but he knew it. "Viktor Kozlov, you cost me money, Thomas. You cost me merchandise. But most importantly, you cost me respect." Lights flickered on. Emergency lighting. Dim but enough to see. Kozlov stood on a catwalk above them. He was 58 years old. Gray hair, hard eyes. He wore an expensive suit like a businessman, but the rifle in his hands told a different story. "You remember me?" Kozlov said. It wasn't a question. "I remember," O'Brien replied. "Good. Then you know I don't forgive. I don't forget. And I don't lose. You lost last night. 21 women gone, free." Kozlov smiled. It was a terrible thing to see. 21, out of thousands, a rounding error. "But you made it personal, so now I make it personal." He gestured. More guards appeared. They dragged someone onto the catwalk. Harrison gasped. It was Margaret Kovach, the woman who ran the coffee shop near the Leatherneck. The woman O'Brien saw every morning. The woman who always had a kind word and a warm smile. "Surprised?" Kozlov asked. "You didn't know? 27 years ago, you pulled a child onto a helicopter, saved her life. She came to America, made a life, opened a coffee shop." He grabbed Margaret's hair, forced her to look down at O'Brien. "And I found her, because I find everyone eventually." O'Brien's world tilted. Margaret Kovach was the girl from the helicopter, the face he had carried for 27 years. She had been right there in Portland this whole time. And he had led Kozlov straight to her. "Let her go," O'Brien said. "This is between you and me." "No, this is between me and everyone you care about." Kozlov pulled a pistol, pressed it against Margaret's head. "You have 10 seconds to throw down your weapons, or I paint these walls with her brain." O'Brien looked at Katie, at Harrison clutching his wounded arm, at Tommy barely able to stand. They couldn't win this fight, not against this many guards, not with their ammunition running low. But he also couldn't let Margaret die. "Do it," Margaret said. Her voice was steady, strong. "Don't give him what he wants." "Shut up," Kozlov said. He cocked the pistol. 5 seconds. O'Brien made a decision, the same kind of decision he had made his whole life. The choice between what was smart and what was right. He lowered his rifle. "Don't shoot. We're standing down." Katie looked at him like he had lost his mind. "Gunny, no." "That's an order, Doc." One by one, they put their weapons on the ground. Kozlov smiled. "Smart. Now step away from the weapons, hands behind your heads." They complied. Guards moved in, zip-tied their hands, searched them for hidden weapons. Rodriguez and Castellano were brought in from the north entrance. Both of them bloodied, both of them furious. All 7 of them were forced to kneel in a line. Kozlov descended from the catwalk. He walked slowly, savoring the moment. Margaret was dragged behind him by 2 guards. He stopped in front of O'Brien. "Do you know what you took from me?" Kozlov asked. "My daughter, Anya. She was 12 years old, beautiful, innocent. And they took her, sold her like an animal." "I heard about Beslin," O'Brien said. "I'm sorry for your loss." "Sorry?" Kozlov's face twisted. "Sorry means nothing. I spent 20 years hunting the men who killed her. I found them, every single one, and I made them suffer. And then you became them." The words hit Kozlov like a slap. His eyes went cold. "I became what I needed to become, to survive, to have power, to make sure no one could hurt me again. You became exactly what killed your daughter, a trafficker, a slaver, the same kind of monster you hunted." Kozlov raised his pistol, pointed it at O'Brien's head. "You don't get to judge me. I'm not judging. I'm just telling you what you already know. That somewhere along the way, you stopped being a father seeking justice. You became a monster seeking profit." For a moment, O'Brien thought Kozlov would pull the trigger. The man's finger tightened on the gun, his face contorted with rage. Then he lowered the weapon. "No," Kozlov said. "Killing you now would be mercy, and I don't do mercy." He turned to his guards. "Take them to the mountain facility, all of them. The old ones go to processing. The young woman goes to inventory. She'll bring a good price." Katie's face went pale. O'Brien lunged toward Kozlov, but guards grabbed him, slammed him back to his knees. "You touch her and I'll kill you," O'Brien said. Kozlov leaned close. You'll try and you'll fail like you failed at everything else. He gestured to Margaret. This one goes too. I have buyers who pay extra for revenge purchases. There's a man in Seattle who specifically requested a Balkan woman who survived the Kosovo War. He wants to break that survivor spirit. Margaret's face remained calm, but O'Brien saw the fear in her eyes, the same fear he had seen 27 years ago on a helicopter in Kosovo. Load them up, Kozlov ordered. I want them at the facility before sunset. Guards hauled them to their feet, started dragging them toward the loading dock where a truck waited. O'Brien's mind raced, looking for options, for escape routes, for anything. But there was nothing. They were loaded into the back of a cargo truck. The door slammed shut. Darkness engulfed them. The truck's engine started. They began to move. In the darkness, O'Brien heard Katie's voice. Gunny, we need to get out of these zip ties. Working on it, Rodriguez said. Despite being restrained, the old Marine was already twisting his hands, trying to break free. Harrison spoke next. His voice was weak from blood loss. The mountain facility. That must be what Castellano saw in the laptop files. Multiple properties in Washington County. The Cascade Mountains, Castellano said. Rural area, perfect for a secure compound. How many guards? Katie asked. Based on the financial records, Kozlov has at least 40 men on payroll. Assume most of them are at his primary facility. 40 armed men against 7 prisoners with no weapons and bound hands. The odds were impossible. O'Brien felt the truck turning, climbing. They were heading into the mountains. Listen to me, Hitty. Listen to me, he said, one of you. We're not done. We've been in worse situations. When? Tommy asked, his voice cracked with fear. Kosovo, Harrison said quietly. Surrounded by Serbian forces. No way out, and we found a way. That was 27 years ago, Katie said. Doesn't matter. The principles are the same. We adapt, we overcome, we survive. Rodriguez finally broke his zip ties. The plastic snapped with a sound like a gunshot in the confined space. That's one of us free, Rodriguez said. He started working on Castellano's restraints. When we get to this facility, O'Brien said, we won't have much time. They'll separate us. The women to one location, the men to another. We need to stay together. How? Katie asked. We fight. The moment that truck door opens, we fight with everything we have. They have guns, Tommy said, and we have surprise. They think we're beaten, defeated. Let them think that, right up until we're not. One by one, Rodriguez freed them from the zip ties. They sat in the darkness and planned. The truck climbed higher into the mountains. The temperature dropped. Through gaps in the cargo container, O'Brien could see pine trees, snow on the peaks. After 2 hours, the truck stopped. They heard voices outside, the sound of a gate opening, dogs barking. The truck moved forward again, stopped. The engine cut off. Get ready, O'Brien whispered. The door opened. Sunlight flooded in, blinding after the darkness. Guards stood outside, 6 of them, rifles ready. Out, one of them barked. Slowly, O'Brien climbed out first, his eyes adjusted to the light. He saw a compound, high fences topped with razor wire, guard towers at the corners, multiple buildings, all of it nestled in a mountain valley surrounded by forest. A fortress. The other prisoners climbed out. Katie, Harrison, Rodriguez, Castellano, Tommy, Margaret. The guards started to separate them. 3 guards moved toward Katie and Margaret. That's when O'Brien made his move. He lunged at the nearest guard. 64 years old, but 50 years of training compressed into explosive violence. He grabbed the guard's rifle, twisted. The guard's finger broke on the trigger guard. O'Brien had the weapon. He fired, point blank. The guard went down. Rodriguez moved next. Despite his prosthetic leg, he was fast. He tackled a guard, slammed the man's head into the truck. Once, twice. The guard collapsed. Katie grabbed a 3rd guard, used her combat medicine knowledge of human anatomy to strike nerve clusters. The guard dropped his weapon and fell to his knees screaming. Castellano and Harrison, both in their 60s, moved with surprising coordination. They flanked a 4th guard. Castellano went low. Harrison went high. The guard didn't stand a chance. Tommy and Margaret grabbed weapons from the downed guards. In 15 seconds, they had turned a prisoner transport into an armed breakout. Alarms started blaring. Guards poured from the buildings. Run, O'Brien shouted. They ran toward the tree line. Bullets kicked up dirt around them. O'Brien returned fire, covering the others. They reached the forest, disappeared into the trees. Behind them, the compound erupted with activity. Dogs, guards, vehicles. O'Brien led them deeper into the forest, higher up the mountain. They ran until their lungs burned, until Harrison collapsed against a tree, clutching his wounded arm. "We need to stop," Katie said. "We need to treat wounds and figure out where we are." They found a small clearing. Rodriguez and Tommy kept watch while Katie treated Harrison's arm. The bullet wound had reopened. He was losing blood. O'Brien checked their weapons. 4 rifles, 2 pistols, limited ammunition. "We're not going to fight our way out of this," Castellano said. "Kozlov has too many men, too much firepower." "Then we call for help," O'Brien said. "With what?" "They took our phones." Margaret spoke for the first time since the escape. "I know these mountains," she said, "and there's a ranger station about 5 miles north. They'll have communication equipment." Everyone turned to look at her. "How do you know that?" O'Brien asked. "Because I've been preparing for this day for 27 years, Margaret said quietly. "Ever since you pulled me onto that helicopter, I knew that someday someone would come for me. Someone who wanted revenge for surviving. So I prepared, learned the area, planned escape routes. I'm not a helpless victim, Thomas. Not anymore." O'Brien stared at this woman he thought he knew, the quiet coffee shop owner. She had been a warrior all along, just hiding it behind a kind smile and hot coffee. "Can you lead us to the ranger station?" he asked. "Yes, then let's move." They traveled through the forest as the sun began to set. Margaret led the way with surprising confidence. O'Brien brought up the rear, watching for pursuit. Behind them, they could hear dogs barking, vehicles on the mountain roads. Kozlov was hunting them, and in these mountains, with limited ammunition and wounded men, they were at a serious disadvantage. But they had something Kozlov didn't. They had survived impossible odds before, and they would survive again. Because Marines don't quit. Not ever. The forest grew darker as they climbed higher into the Cascade Mountains. Margaret led them through terrain that would have broken younger men. O'Brien watched her move with a grace that came from years of preparation. This was a woman who had spent 5 decades ready to run. Harrison was fading. The wound in his arm had stopped bleeding, but his face was pale. He leaned heavily on Castellano as they walked. Katie checked him every 15 minutes. Each time her expression grew more concerned. "He needs a hospital," she whispered to O'Brien. 5 miles to the ranger station. He can make it." "Can he?" O'Brien looked at his old friend. James Harrison was 62 years old. In Vietnam, he had saved 47 Marines. Tonight, he might become the 48th casualty if they didn't get him help soon. "He has to," O'Brien said. Behind them, the sounds of pursuit grew closer. Dogs baying, men shouting, vehicle engines straining on mountain roads. Kozlov was hunting them with everything he had. Rodriguez dropped back to walk beside O'Brien. "We need to slow them down," Rodriguez said. "Buy time." "You have an idea?" Rodriguez smiled. It was the smile of a man who had spent a career making bad situations worse for the enemy. "I know these mountains too. Did survival training here back in '89. There's a narrow pass about half a mile behind us. Perfect ambush point. We don't have enough ammunition for an ambush. Don't need ammunition, just need rocks and gravity." O'Brien understood immediately. Trigger a rock slide, block the pass, force Kozlov's men to go around. Hours of delay. "Do it," O'Brien said. "Take Tommy with you. Meet us at the ranger station." Rodriguez nodded. He grabbed Tommy and they disappeared into the darkness. The remaining 5 continued north. Margaret set a brutal pace. O'Brien could hear Harrison's breathing becoming labored. Could see him stumbling more frequently. At the top of a ridge, Margaret stopped. "There," she said. Below them, barely visible through the trees, was a small building. Lights glowed in the windows. A radio antenna rose from the roof. The ranger station. They descended carefully, staying in the shadows, watching for movement. The station appeared empty. No vehicles outside, no signs of activity. O'Brien approached the front door with his rifle ready. Katie covered him. Castellano helped Harrison down the slope. The door was unlocked. Inside, the station was a single room. Maps on the walls, a desk with radio equipment, a small kitchenette, and sitting at the desk was a forest ranger. He looked up as they entered. His hand moved toward a radio. "Don't," O'Brien said. The rifle pointed at the ranger's chest. The ranger raised his hands. He was young, maybe 30. His name tag read Morrison. "Easy," Morrison said. "I'm not armed. What's going on?" Katie pushed past O'Brien. "Are you alone here?" "Yes, I'm on night watch. The other rangers went down to the valley for supplies." "We need to use your radio. It's an emergency." Morrison looked at them. 7 people. Bloodied, armed, desperate. "Who are you running from?" he asked. "Viktor Kozlov," Margaret said. Morrison's face went pale. "The trafficker? You know about him?" "Everyone in law enforcement knows about Kozlov. FBI, has been trying to catch him for years. Morrison lowered his hand slowly. You're the people who hit his warehouse in Portland. It's all over the police scanners. Then you know we're the good guys, O'Brien said. I know you're wanted for assault, kidnapping, and a dozen other felonies. Doesn't mean you're good guys. Katie stepped forward. My name is Catherine Sullivan, Navy corpsman, retired. This man is bleeding out. I need medical supplies and I need them now. After that, you can decide if we're good guys or not. Morrison looked at Harrison, saw the blood, saw the pain in the old man's face. Medical kit is in the back room, Morrison said. Katie grabbed it and started treating Harrison. O'Brien kept his rifle on Morrison but lowered it slightly. We need to contact the FBI, O'Brien said. Rachel Alvarez. She's coordinating the investigation into Kozlov's network. Morrison turned to his radio. I can patch you through to the FBI field office in Portland, but you need to know something. There's been chatter on the police channels. They know you're in these mountains. They're setting up roadblocks on every route down. How many? All of them. Sheriff's Department, State Police, even brought in tactical units from Seattle. Castellanos swore quietly. Kozlov owns half the police in this region. They're not coming to arrest us. They're coming to kill us. Morrison's expression hardened. If that's true, then yeah, you're the good guys. Give me a minute. He worked the radio, switching frequencies, entering codes. Finally, a voice crackled through the speaker. This is FBI Portland. Identify yourself. This is Ranger Station 7 in the Cascade National Forest. I have civilians here requesting contact with Special Agent Rachel Alvarez. They say it's about Viktor Kozlov. A pause. Then a different voice. Female, urgent. This is Alvarez. Who am I speaking to? O'Brien took the microphone. It's Gunny. We're in trouble. Relief flooded Alvarez's voice. Thank God. We've been looking for you for 6 hours. Where are you? Cascade Mountains. Kozlov's compound. We escaped, but he's hunting us. We have wounded. We need extraction. Give me your coordinates. Morrison read them off. Copy that, Alvarez said. I'm mobilizing a tactical team. But Gunny, we're 2 hours away. Minimum. Can you hold out that long? O'Brien looked at Harrison, at Katie working frantically to stabilize him, at Margaret standing by the window watching the forest. We don't have a choice, he said. Understood. Sit tight. Help is coming. The radio went silent. 2 hours. O'Brien checked his ammunition. Less than one magazine left. The others were in similar shape. They had weapons, but not enough bullets to fight off a sustained assault. We need to fortify this position, Castellanos said. He was already studying the station. 1 room, 3 windows, 1 door. It's defensible, but not for long. They went to work, moving furniture to block windows, stacking supplies to create cover. Morrison helped despite his confusion about what was happening. Katie finished treating Harrison. She had stopped the bleeding and given him something for the pain. But he was weak, too weak to fight. He needs a hospital, Katie said again. 2 hours, O'Brien replied. He might not have 2 hours. Margaret appeared at O'Brien's side. There's movement in the trees. They're coming. O'Brien moved to the window. Through the darkness, he could see shapes moving. Men spreading out, surrounding the station. He counted at least 20. Contact, he said into his radio, hoping Rodriguez could hear. 20+ hostiles moving into position. No response. Either Rodriguez was too far away or his radio was dead. They were on their own. A voice echoed through the forest, amplified by a megaphone. Thomas O'Brien, I know you're in there. Kozlov, you've caused me considerable trouble. Killed my men, freed my merchandise, cost me millions. O'Brien didn't respond. Talking was what Kozlov wanted. Engagement, negotiation. O'Brien had nothing to negotiate. But I'm a reasonable man, Kozlov continued. Give me the women, Margaret Chen and Catherine Sullivan. Keep the rest. You can all walk away. Katie's face went hard. Like hell. It's a trap anyway, Castellanos said. He'll kill all of us regardless. Margaret stood. I'm going out there. No, O'Brien said. He wants me. Let me end this. Margaret, sit down. She met his eyes. 50 years ago, you saved my life. You gave me a future, a chance to live. Now let me save yours. That's not how this works. Then how does it work, Thomas? You keep saving me while everyone around you dies? James is bleeding. Katie is exhausted. These men are old and tired. How many more people have to suffer because of me? None of them are suffering because of you. They're suffering because Kozlov is a monster, and we don't negotiate with monsters. Margaret's eyes filled with tears. Then what do? We fight, like we've always fought. A gunshot shattered the window. Glass exploded inward. Everyone dropped to the floor. More shots followed. Bullets punched through the thin walls of the ranger station. Wood splintered. Plaster dust filled the air. "Return fire!" O'Brien shouted. They fired back. Muzzle flashes lit up the darkness. The sound was deafening in the confined space. O'Brien saw movement near the tree line. Aimed. Fired. A man went down. Beside him, Katie was firing methodically. Each shot controlled. Professional. Castellano fired from the east window. "They're trying to flank us!" "Morrison!" O'Brien shouted at the ranger. "You have any weapons in here?" "Shotgun in the back room." "Get it!" Morrison scrambled to the back, returned with a pump-action 12-gauge and a box of shells. "You know how to use that?" O'Brien asked. "I'm from Montana. I was shooting before I could walk." "Good. Cover the north window." The firefight intensified. Kozlov's men were well-armed and well-trained. They moved in coordinated teams, laying down suppressing fire while others advanced. Military tactics. These weren't street thugs. They were professionals, probably former military like Kozlov himself. O'Brien's rifle clicked empty. He dropped the magazine, reached for another, found nothing. "I'm out," he said. "Me too," Katie replied. Around the room, the others were running dry. Castellano fired his last rounds. Margaret had stopped shooting entirely. Only Morrison still had ammunition for the shotgun. "This is it," Castellano said. "When they rush us, we fight hand to hand." O'Brien pulled his knife. 64 years old and preparing to fight with a blade like he was 20 again. Then he heard something. A distant sound, getting closer. Explosions. The gunfire from Kozlov's men faltered. Confused shouts in Russian. More explosions, closer now. Through the broken window, O'Brien saw fire blooming in the forest. Trees falling, men running. "What is that?" Katie asked. O'Brien knew that sound, had heard it 1,000 times in 3 different wars. M79 grenade launcher, he said, Vietnam era. Castellano's eyes went wide. "The weapons cache. Rodriguez must have found it." From the darkness came a voice. "Rodriguez." "Gunny, get down!" Everyone hit the floor. A grenade arced through the air, landed in the midst of Kozlov's men. The explosion lit up the night. Then Rodriguez appeared, running through the smoke. Tommy beside him, both of them carrying weapons that belonged in a museum. An M60 machine gun, the same weapon Rodriguez had carried 50 years ago. He set up at the edge of the clearing and opened fire. The sound was apocalyptic. The M60 roared. Tracer rounds lit up the darkness in streams of fire. Kozlov's men scattered, tried to find cover, tried to return fire. But Rodriguez was a master. He had spent years behind that weapon, knew it like an extension of his own body. The suppressive fire was devastating. O'Brien saw Kozlov's men retreating, falling back toward their vehicles. "Now," O'Brien shouted, "we push them!" He grabbed Morrison's shotgun, burst through the door. Katie and Castellano followed. They advanced into the chaos, into the smoke and fire. 3 people charging toward 20. It should have been suicide, but Kozlov's men were broken, demoralized. They had expected an easy target. Instead, they had walked into hell. The firefight became a rout. Kozlov's men fled into the forest. Some dropped their weapons. Some tried to stand and fight. None of them succeeded. O'Brien moved through the smoke like a ghost. The shotgun barked. Once, twice, men fell. Katie was beside him, no longer healing, now ending. Her pistol found targets with mechanical precision. Castellano moved slower but no less deadly. Every round he fired hit home. And Rodriguez. The old master sergeant stood in the center of the clearing with the M60 sweeping back and forth. 61 years old and fighting like he was 25. In 5 minutes it was over. Kozlov's men were scattered, dead or running. The clearing fell silent except for the ringing in everyone's ears. O'Brien walked back to the ranger station. Morrison stood in the doorway, his face pale, his hands shaking. "What the hell just happened?" Morrison asked. "Marines happened," O'Brien replied. Inside the station, Harrison was sitting up. The color had returned to his face slightly. "Did we win?" he asked. "We survived," Katie said. "That's close enough." Margaret stood by the window. Tears streamed down her face. "It's over?" she asked. O'Brien wanted to say yes, wanted to tell her she was safe, but he knew better. Kozlov wasn't among the dead or captured, which meant he was still out there, still hunting. "Not yet," O'Brien said. Rodriguez entered the station. He set down the M60 like it weighed 1,000 pounds. His prosthetic leg was damaged. Sparks showed through torn fabric. "Found the weapons cache," Rodriguez said. "Half-mile south, old Cold War bunker. Someone stocked it with Vietnam-era equipment and just left it. M60, M79. Claymore mines, even found some C4. "You brought C4?" Castellano asked. Seemed useful. Tommy came in behind Rodriguez. He carried boxes of ammunition, enough to rearm everyone. FBI is 20 minutes out, Morrison said. He had been monitoring the radio. They're bringing helicopters, medical teams, tactical units. Good, O'Brien said, because this isn't over. As if summoning him, Kozlov's voice echoed through the forest again. Impressive, Thomas. You fight well for an old man, all of you do. O'Brien stepped outside, scanned the darkness. Couldn't see Kozlov, but knew he was close. But you can't win, Kozlov continued. I have resources you can't imagine. Money, connections, power. You're 7 people with stolen weapons in borrowed time. We have something you don't, O'Brien called back. What's that? A reason to fight. Silence. Then Kozlov spoke again. His voice had changed. Gone was the mocking tone. Now there was something else, something almost human. You want to know what happened to me, Thomas? After my daughter died? O'Brien didn't answer. I tried to do it right. Worked with the authorities. Gave them information. Helped them hunt the traffickers. And you know what happened? They ignored me. Said there wasn't enough evidence. Said it wasn't a priority. Kozlov's voice grew bitter. So I did it myself, found them. Killed them. One by one, and it felt good. For the first time since Anya died, I felt something. Purpose. Power. And that's when you became them, O'Brien said. No, that's when I realized the truth. The world is divided into predators and prey. My daughter was prey. She died because she was weak. I swore I would never be weak again. Your daughter wasn't weak. She was innocent. There's a difference. Innocence is weakness. It's what gets you killed. O'Brien thought about Margaret, about Katie, about all the women Kozlov had trafficked, all the lives he had destroyed in the name of strength. You're wrong, O'Brien said. Strength isn't about dominating others. It's about protecting them. That's what warriors do. That's what your daughter needed from you. Protection, not revenge. You don't get to judge me. I'm not judging. I'm pitying you. Because somewhere along the way, you forgot what you were fighting for. Forgot your daughter's face. Forgot everything except your own pain. Another silence. When Kozlov spoke again, his voice was cold. I'm going to kill you now, Thomas. You and everyone you care about. And when I'm done, I'm going to burn that coffee shop to the ground. Erase every trace of the girl you saved. Make it like she never existed. Movement in the trees. O'Brien saw Kozlov step into the clearing. He wore body armor, carried an assault rifle, flanked by 6 remaining guards. Last chance, Kozlov said. Surrender the women and I'll let the rest of you live. O'Brien raised the shotgun. No deal. Kozlov smiled. Then die like the fool you are. The guards raised their weapons. And that's when Harrison stepped out of the ranger station. He was pale, weak, could barely stand. But in his hands he held something that made everyone freeze. A block of C4 explosive, wired to a detonator. Nobody moves, Harrison said. His voice shook, but his thumb was steady on the trigger. Kozlov's eyes widened. You're bluffing. I'm a corpsman, Harrison said. I spent 50 years saving lives, but I also learned how to end them. This much C4 will kill everyone in a 100-foot radius, including me. You won't do it. Harrison looked at O'Brien, at Margaret, at Katie, then back to Kozlov. You're wrong about one thing, Victor. You said innocence is weakness, but you're looking at 7 people who have spent their lives protecting the innocent, who fought wars and saved lives and asked for nothing in return. That's not weakness. That's the strongest thing a person can be. Tears ran down Harrison's face, and I'd rather die protecting them than live in a world where monsters like you win. Jim, no, O'Brien said. Harrison smiled. Tell my boys I love them. Tell them their old man went out doing his job, protecting Marines. His thumb moved toward the trigger. Kozlov's guards opened fire. Harrison's body jerked. Blood bloomed across his chest, but his hand didn't move from the detonator. Katie screamed, started to run toward him. O'Brien grabbed her, held her back. Harrison fell to his knees. The C4 slipped from his hands. And in that moment, Rodriguez moved. The old master sergeant charged forward. His damaged prosthetic leg gave out, but he kept moving, crawling, reaching for the C4. Kozlov's guards were reloading. Rodriguez grabbed the explosive, triggered the detonator, and threw it. The block of C4 sailed through the air, landed at Kozlov's feet. For one frozen moment, everyone stared at it. Then Kozlov ran. The explosion was massive, a ball of fire that consumed everything. Trees shattered. The ground shook. The shockwave knocked O'Brien off his feet. When the smoke cleared, there was a crater where Kozlov and his guards had been standing. O'Brien staggered to his feet. His ears rang. Blood ran from a cut on his forehead. He saw Katie kneeling beside Harrison. saw her hands covered in blood, saw her face twisted with grief. Harrison was gone, dead before he hit the ground. O'Brien looked for Rodriguez, found him lying at the edge of the blast radius. His prosthetic leg was gone. His body was broken. But he was breathing. "Miguel," O'Brien said. He dropped beside his friend. Rodriguez's eyes opened. Blood bubbled at his lips when he tried to speak. "Did we get him?" Rodriguez asked. O'Brien looked at their crater, at the scattered remains. "Yeah, we got him." Rodriguez smiled. "Good. Tell my daughter I'm sorry I missed her wedding. You'll tell her yourself. Help is coming. Just hold on." Rodriguez's hand gripped O'Brien's wrist. The strength was fading. "Semper Fi, Gunny. Semper Fi, brother." Rodriguez's eyes closed. His breathing stopped. O'Brien knelt there in the dirt beside two men who had been his friends for 50 years. Two men who had survived wars and raised families and lived full lives. Two men who had died protecting others. In the distance, he heard helicopters. The FBI tactical team arriving. Medical teams. Rescue. But they were too late for Harrison and Rodriguez. Katie collapsed beside O'Brien. She was crying, great racking sobs that shook her whole body. Margaret knelt on Harrison's other side. She took his hand, held it gently. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for saving me. Again." Castellano stood at the edge of the clearing, silent, his face carved from stone. But O'Brien saw the tears tracking through the dirt on the old colonel's cheeks. Tommy stared at the bodies, at the price that had been paid for his sister's freedom. Morrison, the young ranger, sat on the ground. He was in shock, couldn't process what he had just witnessed. The helicopters landed. FBI agents poured out. Alvarez was among them. She ran to O'Brien. "Gunny," she said, then saw the bodies. "Oh, God." "Harrison and Rodriguez," O'Brien said. His voice was hollow. "They're gone." Alvarez knelt beside the fallen Marines. She bowed her head. Medical teams checked the survivors, treated wounds, started IVs, but their real work would come later, in hospitals and therapy sessions, in long nights where sleep wouldn't come. As dawn broke over the Cascade Mountains, O'Brien stood alone at the edge of the clearing. Behind him, the sounds of the aftermath, body bags being zipped, evidence being collected, reports being filed. But O'Brien wasn't thinking about any of that. He was thinking about two men who had answered the call one last time, who had put on their old uniforms and picked up their old weapons and gone to war for people they barely knew. Because that's what Marines did. Katie appeared beside him. "They died heroes," she said. "They died," O'Brien replied. "That's all that matters." "No, how they died matters. Why they died matters." She took his hand. "They died so Margaret could live, so I could live, so 21 other women could have a future. That's not meaningless. That's everything." O'Brien looked at this young woman who had seen too much death, who had held too many dying men, who still believed that sacrifice meant something. "You're right," he said. "It is everything." They stood together, watching the sun rise, watching a new day begin, a day that Harrison and Rodriguez would never see, but a day that hundreds of women would see because two old warriors had chosen to fight one last time. Behind them, Alvarez was organizing the cleanup, coordinating with federal agents, building cases that would dismantle what remained of Kozlov's network. Castellano was being interviewed, telling the story, making sure the truth was recorded. Margaret sat in a helicopter wrapped in a blanket, safe, free, alive. Tommy stood with his sister Emily, both of them damaged but healing. And Morrison, the young ranger, was learning what it meant to witness true courage. The battle was over, but the war against evil never ended. It would continue, tomorrow, next week, next year. And when it did, new warriors would answer the call, just like O'Brien had answered 50 years ago, just like Harrison and Rodriguez had answered last night. The sun climbed higher, and somewhere in the distance, a bugler played taps. 3 weeks after the battle in the Cascade Mountains, Thomas O'Brien stood in Arlington National Cemetery wearing his dress blues for the first time in 15 years. The uniform still fit, the medals still shone, but the man wearing them felt 1,000 years old. The sky above Washington was the color of steel. Rain threatened but hadn't fallen yet. Hundreds of people gathered around two flag-draped coffins. Military personnel, veterans, family members, strangers who had read about two old warriors who died protecting the innocent. O'Brien stood at attention between the graves. To his left was James Harrison's coffin. To his right, Miguel Rodriguez. Both of them would be buried with full military honors. Both of them would rest among heroes. The Marine Corps Honor Guard stood ready. 7 rifles, 7 men who would fire 3 volleys, 21 shots for 21 women saved. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone. Catherine Sullivan stood beside O'Brien. She wore her Navy dress uniform. Her face was composed, but her eyes were red from crying. She hadn't stopped crying since that night. Sometimes O'Brien wondered if she ever would. Robert Castellano stood on O'Brien's other side. The old colonel looked smaller somehow, like part of him had stayed in those mountains with his fallen brothers. Rachel Alvarez attended in her FBI dress uniform. She had spent 3 weeks dismantling what remained of Kozlov's network. 12 states, 47 arrests, 233 victims recovered. It was the largest trafficking bust in U.S. history. The investigation had also revealed Detective Warren Shaw's role in the organization. Shaw had been arrested the same day as the mountain raid. Federal prosecutors were building a case for racketeering, conspiracy, and accessory to human trafficking. He would spend the rest of his life in prison. But none of that could bring back Harrison and Rodriguez. Margaret Kovac sat in the front row. She had closed her coffee shop, said she needed time to process what had happened, to understand that she was finally safe after 27 years of looking over her shoulder. Tommy Brennan sat with his sister Emily. Both of them wore black. Both of them carried guilt they didn't deserve. Emily because men had died saving her. Tommy because he had walked into a trap and forced those men to come after him. O'Brien had told them both the same thing. Harrison and Rodriguez didn't die for Emily or Tommy. They died because evil men threatened innocent people. They died doing what they had always done, protecting those who couldn't protect themselves. The chaplain stepped forward. He was an older man with kind eyes and a voice that carried weight. We gather today to honor 2 warriors, 2 Marines, 2 Americans who answered the call of duty not once but throughout their entire lives. The chaplain spoke about service, about sacrifice, about men who could have retired quietly but instead chose to fight one last time. He spoke about James Harrison, about dozens of refugees saved during peacekeeping operations, about a life spent healing, about a final act that saved 7 people and ended a trafficking network that had destroyed thousands of lives. He spoke about Miguel Rodriguez, about a leg lost in service, about decades spent teaching others to fight, about a man who threw himself into danger without hesitation because that's what Marines did. The words were beautiful, appropriate, true, but they couldn't capture what O'Brien felt. He felt empty, hollowed out, like part of his soul had died in those mountains. Harrison and Rodriguez had been his friends for decades. They had survived wars together, raised families, grown old. They were supposed to retire and tell lies about the past and die peacefully in their sleep. Not like this, not bleeding out in a forest while younger men failed to save them. The chaplain finished speaking. The honor guard raised their rifles. Ready? 7 rifles came to shoulders. Aim. 7 fingers found triggers. Fire. The volley echoed across Arlington. Birds scattered from nearby trees. The sound rolled like thunder. 2 more volleys followed. Each one struck O'Brien like a physical blow. Then a bugler played taps. The mournful notes drifted across the cemetery. Over thousands of white headstones, over generations of warriors who had given everything. The honor guard folded the flags. Crisp, perfect, each fold precise. The flags were presented to Harrison's sons and Rodriguez's daughter. They accepted them with shaking hands and tear-stained faces. O'Brien wanted to say something, wanted to tell them their fathers had died as heroes, that their sacrifice mattered, but the words wouldn't come. After the service, people gathered at a reception hall near the cemetery. Food was served, stories were told. Life continued even though 2 men had left it. O'Brien stood alone in a corner watching the crowd. He had never been good at these things, didn't know what to say to grieving families, didn't know how to accept condolences from strangers. Katie found him. You okay, Gunny? She asked. No, she nodded. Me neither. They stood in silence for a while. Harrison's oldest son wants to meet you, Katie said. He has questions about what happened. I don't want to talk about it. He deserves to know how his father died. O'Brien looked at her. You tell him you were there, you saw everything. He wants to hear it from you. Why? Because you were his father's friend. Because your words will mean something his don't. O'Brien wanted to refuse, wanted to walk away. But Katie was right. Harrison's son deserved the truth, deserved to know that his father's last act was one of incredible courage. The son was named Michael. He was 40 years old with his father's eyes and his mother's gentle demeanor. He approached O'Brien with hesitation. Gunnery Sergeant O'Brien, Michael said. Just O'Brien now, I'm retired. My father talked about you, said you were the best Marine he ever knew. Your father was wrong. He was the best Marine I ever knew. Michael's eyes filled with tears. Can you tell me what happened? The FBI gave us a briefing, but it felt incomplete, like they were leaving things out. O'Brien took a breath. Then he told the story. All of it. The trafficking network, the rescue operations, the battle in the mountains. Harrison standing with a block of C4 in his hands. His final words about protecting the innocent. Michael listened without interrupting. When O'Brien finished, the younger man was openly weeping. He was always like that, Michael said. Always putting others first, always the protector. He saved my life more times than I can count, O'Brien said. And not just my life. He saved everyone around him. That's who he was. I wish I could have told him I understood. That I was proud of him. He knew, trust me, he knew. Michael shook O'Brien's hand. Thank you for being his friend, for standing beside him. After Michael walked away, O'Brien felt some of the weight lift. Not much, but enough to breathe a little easier. Rodriguez's daughter found him next. Her name was Maria. She was 35 years old and had her father's fierce eyes. I'm not going to ask what happened, Maria said. I read the reports. I know my father died destroying a monster. That's enough. He talked about you constantly, O'Brien said. Was proud of you. Wanted to be at your wedding. I know, I invited him 3 times. He said he was too old to dance. O'Brien smiled despite the pain. Your father could still dance. He just didn't want to admit it. Maria handed O'Brien a small box. We found this in his belongings. It's addressed to you. O'Brien opened it. Inside was a set of dog tags, Rodriguez's original tags from his first deployment, and a note written in shaky handwriting. Gunny, if you're reading this, I'm probably dead. Don't feel bad. I lived longer than most Marines have a right to. Had a good daughter. Saw the world. Made a difference. That's more than enough for one life. Keep these tags. When your time comes, tell St. Peter you knew Miguel Rodriguez. He'll let you in. Semper Fi, brother. O'Brien's vision blurred. He clutched the dog tags like a lifeline. Maria put a hand on his shoulder. My father loved you, all of you. His Marine brothers. You were his real family. He was ours too. The reception continued for another hour. O'Brien shook hands, accepted condolences, pretended to be strong while falling apart inside. Finally, Castellano found him. We need to go, the colonel said. There's a flight back to Portland in 2 hours. They left Arlington and drove to the airport. O'Brien watched Washington pass by the window. Monuments to dead presidents, memorials to fallen soldiers, a city built on sacrifice. At the airport, they met up with Katie, Margaret, and Tommy. Alvarez was flying back separately. She had more work to do in Washington, more testimony to give, more cases to build. The flight to Portland was quiet. Everyone lost in their own thoughts. O'Brien stared out the window at the clouds below, thought about Harrison and Rodriguez lying in the ground at Arlington, thought about all the men he had known who died before their time. War took so much, even from those who survived it. When they landed in Portland, O'Brien expected to feel relief, to be home, to be safe. Instead, he felt nothing. The Leatherneck was closed when they arrived. O'Brien had locked it up before flying to Washington. Now he stood outside looking at the bar that had been his life for 15 years. It felt like a tomb. Katie stood beside him. You going to open it? Not today. When? I don't know. They stood in the rain, Portland's constant drizzle soaking through their clothes. Gunny, Katie said, I know this is hard. I know you're hurting. But closing yourself off won't bring them back. I'm not closing myself off. Yes, you are. You've been doing it since that night. Pushing everyone away, refusing to talk, refusing to feel. O'Brien turned to her. What do you want me to say, Doc? That I'm fine? That watching my friends die doesn't hurt? That I can just move on like nothing happened? No, I want you to admit that you're broken, that we're all broken, and that's okay. It's not okay. Yes, it is. Being broken means we're human. It means we care. It means their deaths mattered. O'Brien wanted to argue, wanted to tell her she was wrong, but he couldn't, because she was right. He was broken. Had been since that night. Maybe had been broken since the first time he watched a friend die. Since the first time he pulled a trigger. Since the first time he realized that doing the right thing often meant losing pieces of yourself. I don't know how to do this, O'Brien said quietly. I don't know how to keep going when they're gone. Katie took his hand. You do what they would have wanted. You honor their memory. You keep fighting. You don't let their sacrifice be meaningless. How? By living? By helping others? By being the Marine they believed you were. O'Brien looked at this young woman who had seen so much death, who had held so many dying men, who somehow still believed in hope and healing. When did you get so wise, he asked. I had good teachers. They stood in the rain together, not saying anything, just being present. Finally, O'Brien unlocked the Leatherneck. They went inside. The bar smelled stale. Dust covered the tables. But it was home. Over the next month, life slowly resumed. O'Brien reopened the Leatherneck. Veterans returned. Stories were told. The memory of Harrison and Rodriguez was honored with a plaque on the wall. Katie went back to school, finished her thesis on post-traumatic stress in veterans, used her own experience as a case study, graduated with honors. Castellano helped the FBI build cases against the remaining members of Kozlov's network. His tactical expertise proved invaluable. Dozens of traffickers were convicted, hundreds of victims were freed. Margaret reopened her coffee shop, but she changed the name. Now it was called Harrison's Place, a tribute to the man who had died protecting her. Tommy and Emily both entered therapy, started processing their trauma, started healing. And slowly, painfully, the survivors began to rebuild. 6 months after the battle, Katie came to the Leatherneck with news. "I got a job offer," she said, "VA hospital, running a program for veterans with PTSD. O'Brien felt pride and sadness in equal measure. "That's good. You'll be great at it. There's more. I want to name the program after Harrison and Rodriguez. Call it the Warrior's Path, a place where veterans can come to heal." They would have liked that. Katie sat at the bar. O'Brien poured her coffee. Black, no sugar, just like she liked it. "Gunny, I need to ask you something," Katie said. "Will you help me with the program? Come talk to the veterans. Share your experience." "I'm not a therapist." "No, but you're a survivor, and sometimes that's more important than a degree." O'Brien thought about it. Thought about all the veterans who were suffering in silence, who didn't know how to ask for help, who thought strength meant bearing pain alone. "Okay," he said, "I'll help." The program launched 3 months later. Katie ran therapy sessions. O'Brien led support groups. Castellano taught stress management through tactical breathing and meditation. Veterans came, young and old, men and women, all of them carrying scars that couldn't be seen. O'Brien told them his story, told them about Kosovo, about 27 years of carrying memories, about watching friends die, about learning to live with loss. And slowly, the veterans started to open up, started to heal. 1 year after the battle, on a cold November morning, O'Brien stood in front of a new building. The sign above the door read, "The Harrison Rodriguez Veterans Center." Katie had done it, used donations and grants and sheer determination to create a place where veterans could find help. Medical care, therapy, job training, housing assistance, everything they needed. The center opened with a ceremony. Local officials attended, news cameras recorded it. But O'Brien didn't care about any of that. He cared about the veterans who walked through those doors, the ones who were lost and hurting and desperate for hope. Inside, the walls were covered with photographs, images of Harrison and Rodriguez in their prime, younger, stronger, full of life, but also images of them at the end, old, weathered, still standing, still fighting. A reminder that warriors never stop serving. Katie gave a speech at the opening, talked about sacrifice and service, talked about 2 men who gave everything so others could be free. O'Brien stood in the back and listened, felt tears running down his face, didn't bother to wipe them away. After the ceremony, a young Marine approached him. The kid was barely 20, had the look of someone who had seen combat. "Sir," the Marine said, "I heard what you did, what your friends did. I just wanted to say thank you." "Thank you for what?" "For showing me that it's okay to ask for help, that getting hurt doesn't make you weak, that real strength is admitting when you're broken and trying to fix it." O'Brien looked at this kid, saw himself decades ago, young, scared, trying to be strong. "What's your name, Marine?" O'Brien asked. "David Kovach, sir." The name hit O'Brien like a punch. Kovach, like Margaret Kovach. "Any relation to Margaret Kovach?" O'Brien asked. The kid smiled. "She's my mother. She told me about you, about what you did for her." O'Brien felt the world shift, circles completing, generations connecting. Margaret had been 11 when he saved her. 27 years later, she was 38, old enough to have a 20-year-old son. "Your mother is an incredible woman," O'Brien said. "She said the same about you, sir. Said you saved her life twice. Once 27 years ago and once last year." "I was just doing my job." "That's what she said you'd say." David handed O'Brien a card. "I'm starting at this center next week. PTSD treatment. My mother said you might be willing to talk, to help." O'Brien took the card. "I'll be here." David saluted. O'Brien returned it. Then the young Marine walked away. Katie appeared at O'Brien's side. "You okay?" she asked. "Yeah, I think I am." "Good, because we have 50 veterans signed up for next month. We're going to need all hands." O'Brien smiled. "Then we better get to work." They walked through the center together. past therapy rooms and medical offices, past training facilities and housing units, past photographs of Harrison and Rodriguez watching over everything. And O'Brien realized something. His friends weren't really gone. They lived in this building, in the lives they had saved, in the legacy they had created. They lived in Katie's determination, in Margaret's courage, in Tommy's healing, in Emily's recovery. They lived in every veteran who walked through these doors seeking help, in every life that was rebuilt, in every person who learned that asking for help was the bravest thing a warrior could do. Harrison and Rodriguez had died, that was true, but they had also won, had accomplished something that would outlive them all. They had created hope. 2 years after the battle, O'Brien stood at the Leatherneck on a Tuesday morning. The sun was shining, unusual for Portland. The bar was full of veterans, young and old, all of them gathering like they did every week, telling stories, sharing pain, healing together. Margaret came in with fresh coffee. She smiled at O'Brien, that same smile from 27 years ago. Still alive, still free. Katie arrived next. She had been promoted to director of the entire VA mental health program for the Pacific Northwest, but she still made time for the Leatherneck, still made time for the people who needed her. Castellano sat in his usual corner. He was writing a book about tactical operations, about lessons learned from a lifetime of military service. The proceeds would go to the Veterans Center. Tommy came in with Emily, both of them volunteers at the center now, both of them giving back, helping others who were lost like they had been. And on the wall above the bar, 2 photographs looked down at everything. Harrison and Rodriguez, in their dress blues, young and strong, forever frozen in time. Beneath the photos, a plaque read, "Greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends." O'Brien poured coffee for everyone, listened to their stories, offered advice when asked, stayed silent when silence was needed. This was his life now. Not fighting, not killing, just being present, being available, being proof that warriors could survive and heal and find purpose after the battles ended. As the morning wore on, a young woman walked into the bar. She was 19. Nervous, she wore a backpack and had the look of someone who had been running for a long time. "Is this the Leatherneck?" she asked. "It is," O'Brien replied. "Can I help you?" "I'm looking for Thomas O'Brien. Someone told me he helps people." "I'm O'Brien. What kind of help do you need?" The girl's eyes filled with tears. "I escaped from some men, bad men. They're looking for me. I don't know where else to go." O'Brien felt the old instincts kick in. The protector, the warrior. But he also felt something new. Peace. Purpose. "You're safe here," O'Brien said. "What's your name?" "Sarah." "Okay, Sarah. We're going to help you. That's what we do here." Katie came over. "I'll call Alvarez. Get FBI protection started." Margaret brought Sarah coffee. "Sit down, honey. You're among friends now." Tommy and Emily made space at a table. "We've been where you are. We know what it's like. You're not alone." And as Sarah sat down, surrounded by people who understood pain and survival and hope, O'Brien realized something profound. The fight never ended. There would always be evil in the world, always be people who preyed on the innocent, always be battles to fight. But there would also always be warriors. Some of them wore uniforms. Some of them wore civilian clothes. Some of them were old. Some were young. But all of them shared one thing: the willingness to stand between evil and the innocent, to protect those who couldn't protect themselves, to fight even when the odds were impossible. That was the warrior's code. That was Semper Fidelis, always faithful, to the mission, to each other, to the innocent. Harrison and Rodriguez had lived that code, had died upholding it, and now O'Brien and the others would carry it forward, would pass it to the next generation, would make sure their sacrifice meant something. The sun climbed higher over Portland. Life continued. The world turned. And in a small bar called the Leatherneck, warriors gathered to heal and help and honor those who had fallen. Because that's what warriors did. Not just fight, but protect, heal, build, create something better from the ashes of what was lost. O'Brien looked around the bar at all these people, his family, not by blood but by choice, by shared sacrifice, by commitment to something greater than themselves. Katie caught his eye and smiled. Castellano raised his coffee cup in a silent toast. Margaret nodded with understanding in her eyes. Tommy and Emily sat with Sarah, already helping her feel safe. And on the wall, Harrison and Rodriguez looked down with approval. The mission continued. The warriors remained faithful. And in the end, that was all that mattered. Semper Fidelis, always faithful, forever. I spent weeks researching veteran stories and the reality of human trafficking to bring you this tale. What struck me most wasn't just the tactical operations or the firefights. It was the quiet moment when O'Brien realizes the coffee shop owner is the girl he saved 27 years ago. That's when I knew this story mattered. To every veteran watching, your service didn't end when you took off the uniform. The warrior spirit never retires. What moment hit you hardest? Was it Harrison's sacrifice? The Margaret reveal? Drop a comment. I read every single one, and your stories inspire the next mission. Subscribe if you believe some battles are worth fighting at any age. Hit like if Semper Fi means something to you. Next story drops Friday in another untold chapter of American courage. Semper Fidelis, brothers and sisters.